your pain. Open your eyes, you're losing control. Open your eyes, put down the phone. Conditioned by misinformation, it's just the media telling us lies. Decipher fiction from the truth. Society's slow and tragic demise. Open your eyes, you're losing control. Open your eyes, put down the phone. Everyone's got their fucking opinion.
Come on now, it's a party. It's the New York Hardcore Chronicles live. Smoke them if you got them. Sunday afternoon or Sunday night, depending on where you are. Steve Bosco, my man. What's happening, bro? I hope you're well. What's up, Darren? Jose, como está? What else? Who else is out there? Joshua, what's up? My man, Joshua Hurst. Hardcore Legends Trading Cards. There you go. Hope everybody's well. Spiky, what do you say? Robert Hogg in Scotland. Scotland in the house. Yes, Ray Hogan. This is going to be a great one. But then again, we're in the business of doing great ones, aren't we? Zemo Z, my man. Happy New Year. Thank you. You too. Larry Kelly, where are you? Going to be driving. You still driving? Larry Kelly was Jingles Bells. Hello. Sander, good to see you in the pre-show. Hey, just a heads up that if you're a patron, a lot of times we do these pre-show things, and all patrons are welcome. We just saw Sander on there. And listen, if you're considering it, please make the plunge and support the show on Patreon. It is really the best way to support the show. $2 a month or $5 a month. Don't be a cheap fuck. If you're watching the show and you're enjoying the show, please support the show. And today we did it. We do it's like a tailgating pre-show thing. Everybody comes on. They meet the day's guest and so on and so forth. So if you have it in your heart, please support this show on Patreon. It is important. This is important stuff. But then again, I'm preaching to the converted, right? There you go. Is that right, Steve Bosco? Time for a rager. All right. Don Foos, my man. Cleveland in the house. What's going on in Cleveland, Don? Ryan Bland. You know what? For sure, brother. And we're going to talk. Yeah. Hang out a minute. We're going to talk. We're going to talk about this book for sure. Brett Friedman, Brett the Bookie, my neighbor, checking in. Brett the Bookie, what's going on? Listen, if anyone needs to place a bet, Brett is your man. Brian Mattson, New York Hardcore Chronicles production team in the house. There you go. So that said, what's up, Lee Bundy? That said, I'm happy to see everybody, and I hope things are going well. I want to throw something out there. I don't want to throw things off track, but I need your help with something. We're launching a little bit of an imprint record label thing. It hasn't been announced yet. Me and Generation Records, we're going to start putting a couple things out, and we need a name for this record. I want to say company, but imprint. So here we go. It's wide open. It's not necessarily like a hardcore label. We're not just going to be doing hardcore releases, but we're going to be doing like real interesting offbeat sort of hardcore related things. I can't tell you what the first release is, but it's a good one. So we're working towards that. So Pig Vomit, huh? Pig Vomit Records? Not sure about that. Generation Stone. I thought of that, but enough of me talking. Enough, I can't even bear to hear my name anymore. Swamp Ass. Come on, Hegs, knock it off. Hey, Paul Bayford, oi from UK. Yes, brother. What's up, John in London? Anyway, Hard Records. Something tells me there's been a Hard Records. Speaking of Hard Records, speaking of hard in general, let's bring on Lori Dawn. What's up?
I am anything but that today. I'm exhausted.
And while we're at it, let's bring on Stephen Messina.
Hey. How you doing, Steven?
How
Are you
doing?
home? How did you do that trick? That's interesting.
I transported myself.
Right.
Actually, this was all thanks to my personal chauffeur for the weekends, Marco, who I wasn't even looking at the speedometer. I just wanted to get home.
Wow.
So for those wondering, last night, tell us, Laura. You tell us, and then Stephen, you
This is a great picture by Steven. Yeah. So this was the closing of my art show, and it was also the encore performance of My War. So we had the band. The band was back together again. So big thanks to My War for bringing it, and for Aaron and Will and Drew and Rochelle and Kayla and Steven for all giving the performances of a lifetime. And I have to mention also Danielle on backup vocals.
There you go. Here's the shot right here. There it is.
Incredible.
Yeah.
It was great seeing her back on the mic. And it was a really, really fantastic time. All thanks to the Calling Bell and Britt and her crew there. Mo and Cece, they all really pulled together and made this just a beautiful experience, not only for me, but for, they have an ongoing program with, up and coming artists that they have come in to the Calling Bell. And it's just a really beautiful space with some amazingly talented tattoo artists. And I highly recommend for your next piece of art on your body to head out to the Calling Bell.
And this is John Gussman.
Yep.
And
yep.
He's been a guest on this show.
Yes.
And his gal has the space, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So he's a really fantastic artist in his own right. He paints, does illustrations, he's a musician. And and Britt owns that space there, and what she's built there in the community is just invaluable to Huntington.
Yeah, it was very
absolutely.
Yeah,
it was.
She really cool. Brings a really beautiful art community together there.
And it was a really nice. We had a good time. Tristan didn't play with us. He lives 5 minutes away, but he was sick. And we told him to stay.
Feels better.
But Aaron brought it, and Will, of course. Every show I play now is with Will, you know. So it was great. Aaron was great. But I must say that one of the highlights for me would be probably the highlight.
Yes.
The highlight for me personally. Look. It's all good. I've been on many stages, held many mics, took airplane flights and all that, So for me, the highlight was probably what you're holding in your hand right here.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Steven, explain what this is.
My mom, the great and powerful Jane Messina, when she heard that I was going, to this closing reception, she said, so what is that? I said, well, it's going to be an art exhibition, and the band is going to play. And she said, I'm going to make you some rice pudding.
Yes.
And
just look at the stripes, the artistry on there.
I mean, my dad was in the deli business for my whole life, and this was a staple of our delicatessens. And she makes it for every special occasion, for the holidays. And when she heard, in fact, she was so happy when I told her how much she liked it. She said, next time, tell me, I'll make a bigger tray.
Yeah.
So you can expect, this is just shapes of things to come. So.
Well, that right there is like inspiration to do something fantastic.
Listen,
and,
when you leave,
and I still got to bring Drew an antipasto tray as well.
Listen, when you lead a life, when you lead this kind of renegade lifestyle, you can really appreciate something like Mom's rice pudding.
Oh yeah, and it really is delicious. I mean, she really is a great cook, though.
Yep. So
there's my war crew right there.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. Kayla and Rochelle killed it.
Yeah, both of them.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Kayla did "I Love Living in the City," and
Mhm.
Rochelle did "Misfits Bullet." It was
Yeah.
great.
It was awesome. So
Yeah.
grateful. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a
Hey,
really good
there
time.
she is, incendiary. What's up? What's up, Cindy?
Yeah, thank you to everybody who came out, Cindy and Elisa, Jojo and Jonathan.
Yeah.
We saw Michelle and Lenny.
I'm just seeing if
The people from the Perks department came out.
yeah.
Yeah. Some people came out before Zach Sabbath.
That's right. That's
You
right.
know, we saw half a Death Cycle.
Before they,
Yeah.
I'm not going to say anything bad about Zach Sabbath, you know. So there you go. But that's cool. There you go. Well, all right. Well, yeah, it was really great. It was a fun time. I'm glad it went well. We got to hang out, you know, with all kinds of people, and it was really nice.
In beautiful Huntington. So
Yeah.
there you go.
In Huntington, Long Island, and I got to have some of Mom's rice pudding. So
and I love
it. Doesn't get more Long Island than that.
A big campfire sing along at the end. Everybody was singing along, and
you know, honestly, I really like playing guitar and drums and doing what we're doing with My War. You know, I want to do more of it. You know,
we got to find opportunities to do some more. That was fun.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, Lori, I'll see you in a bit. Steven.
Thank you.
Steven, if you're watching,
I'm here.
Yeah, I'll pull you back on because I know you have some photos in the book today.
Absolutely.
All right, I'll talk to you in a bit. This is it. You asked for it, you got it. The New York Hardcore Chronicles Live, and we are sponsored by the Texas Silver Rush, DTFM Vinyl Distro, Generation Records, 126 Hardcore Clothing, and Mad Vintage. They buy, sell, and collect band shirts, primarily hardcore. The DIY operation was started and is operated by a hardcore kid who just loves collecting and eventually got into vintage clothing, specifically the realm of vintage band shirts. They're always looking to buy out collections to either keep, sell, or trade. New shirts added daily at www.madvintage.com and posted on Instagram. Dig deep into that closet of crap and reach out to them. Help me help you, Mad Vintage. That said, before we get our guest on, let me see if we got. Hey, Spike Polite, how you doing? Good to see you. Dee Shimon. For those that are just chiming in, I'm looking for. I'm collaborating with Generation Records. We have a little label imprint. We're going to start putting out a couple of things. Can't mention what just yet, but we're having a hard time coming up with a name. So, anybody has any? Let me see. Let me scroll back a little bit. Reign of Rochelle Records. Good one. Reign of Rochelle. Good one. Jelly Valve Records. For Dear Life Records. That's not bad. Let me get a pen. Let me get a pen here. Hold on. You know, that one I like. For Dear Life Records. Not bad. Let's see what else. Legendary Records. Let's not get crazy. What else? Hard Records. You better believe that's like Round Records. You better believe there's been a record company or record imprint called Hard Records, you know. So that said, Generational Records. Denise, why are you doing a super chat? What's going on? Do you have a question? Do you have something to say? Hitting the Streets Records. Gluten-Free Records. Gravestone Records. That's not bad. But it's not all about me. The Last Capillary Records. Anyway, you guys stew on that. This is going to be an ongoing theme. Let's clear the deck. What the heck? And let's bring on today's guest. All right? You asked for it. You got it. All right. Here we go. Ugh. All right. Today's guest is a photographer musician hailing from Ypsilanti in the Wolverine state of Michigan. Ypsilanti. As a musician, he is known for his work with Suspects as well as Vanishing Twin. As a photographer, he is known for the diversity of musical genres that he has covered in his work. Excuse me. Here today to talk with us about his new book, The St. Vitus Bar, the First 10 Years book. Please welcome, coming at us from Verona, New Jersey, Mr. Nathaniel Shannon. Hey,
Oh,
man.
hey.
Oh, hey.
It's me.
What's up?
Oh, just sitting around, beautiful Sunday, thinking about how I'm still alive and how to keep that going for a while longer.
Well, Verona, man. What's happening in Verona?
There's a lot of deer.
My Verona. Ding, 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 ding.
The Knack, straight out of Detroit, Michigan.
A lot of deer. You got to stay away from them, right? They're like tick conduits.
I haven't had any experiences with ticks, but we're on our like third generation of deer traversing through our backyard, and it is wonderful to see the little babies grow up to the point of like there are many mornings I will go out to my car. There's just like deer surrounding my car. I'm like, that motherfucker's got to go, man.
And they have they have no fear. They have no fear of humanity, huh?
No, I mean it's better than like junkies.
Yeah,
they're cuter.
Have you ever hit one?
I've not, thankfully. I'm pretty cautious at night driving around here.
Yeah,
but they don't give a fuck, which I kind of like. I'd rather them be cool with being around people than scared, because they just come and hang out in the backyard. We'll be sitting in the backyard. They're there. We're there. Just wave.
I got a friend that hit a deer on his motorcycle on the Montauk Highway, and he got smoked.
Man.
He got smoked, man. He got banged up,
I bet.
So that said, some Detroit people are checking in. What's up, Rat Bones? That said, I mentioned and I love it. I'm so excited to talk about Ypsilanti.
Ypsilanti.
Am I pronouncing it right?
Sure, man. It's your world.
Yeah.
Your show. Ypsilanti.
So how did you come up? Did you grow up in a musical household? How did music and art come into your life?
Music and art started, I don't know, I guess pretty young. My parents had records. We listened to music. I think early on, especially hearing Michael Jackson and the Spinners, I gravitated towards that maybe more than I actually, a band that now that I'm thinking about this very early that I remember hearing that like, everybody wants to like suck the Beatles' dick as hard as possible. But like, I remember hearing the Zombies and just like being like, wow, this is so much more well-written than the Beatles. But really what I think had a bigger lasting impact on me was locally, there were two things. University of Michigan had a like when I was in middle and high school, they had their college radio station that had a metal show called the Friday Night Grind that introduced me to a lot of stuff. And then there's a radio station in Windsor, Ontario called 89X that started in the late 80s. And what was great about that is because it was in Canada, as long as they played X amount of Canadian bands on the show, they could play whatever they wanted. So it was like kind of like mainstream broadband college radio. So there was a lot of music that I got introduced to, like hearing Sonic Youth's like the full Diamond C, like all 20 minutes of it on the radio, because they didn't have to play 3-minute songs and then get the fuck out. Sure. So that had like a massive impact on me. And what was great about that is there's a show called the Homeboy Show that showcased local Detroit bands like in the early and mid 90s. And so rather than having to necessarily like have a sibling or a cousin or a friend pass me a tape, I was able to like actually start listening to local music on the radio on Sunday nights. And I used to tape that shit off the radio and then like obsessively listen to it. And this was
in an era of pre-internet. So
yeah,
I mean, this is, there was no internet reference, and this was sort of like the great last stand for radio. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, I think so. And ironically, that channel just went off the air a couple of years ago and switched formats to country music, as everything has switched formats to country music. And their very first song they ever played on the radio was Jane's Addiction, and the very last song they ever played was Jane's Addiction. And what's wild to me, and I even bring that up, is like, because of internet streaming, even though I live out here, I was able to listen to that like last broadcast of like this radio station that I grew up listening to, that regardless of like where you went, your trajectory in life, like everybody in Metro Detroit had access in the 90s. And then, you know, early 2000s kind of started to fall apart, and it just turned into like just absolute bullshit. But there was like that decade stretch of just like, they played everything. And it was something that, like, growing up in it, you don't know what you have access to until you leave and you talk to people and they're like, I have no idea who any of these bands are that you're talking about, that maybe from Canada, that like got played in Detroit and maybe like Seattle, or like markets that are closer to the, like border towns, essentially, that those bands would come and play, especially like in the wave of like early 90s shoegaze and indie rock, and kind of I guess what became like alternative rock. But, you know, hearing Dinosaur Jr. on the radio was like not uncommon, where it's like, you know, maybe K-Rock or like some LA, New York would play, but it's like, you're not going to hear that shit like in Nebraska.
Is Iggy Pop from your town?
Yeah, he is.
And it is also the home or the Domino's Pizza is from there?
It is. Are the things I always like to say that my hometown were known for is Domino's, Iggy Pop, and Willow Run Airport, which built the Enola Gay, which then later dropped the bomb on Hiroshima. I
was wondering what the Enola Gay connection was, because I saw you mention that in an interview, and I was like, I wasn't sure, was Paul Tibbett from there who flew the Enola Gay?
Sure.
Was his mother, whose name was Enola Gay, he named the plane after. I couldn't figure out what the Enola Gay connection was.
Yeah, Ypsi was a factory town, you know, so there's a couple Ford, like there's auto, obviously, like Detroit auto industry was present there, but Willow Run Airport, you know, they built bomber planes and flew them out of there. And I guess the legend, I don't want to, like, people call me out on shit I don't actually know about. The story, at least,
be careful on this show, because you'll get called out on it.
Was that plane like originated there, you know? So those are like three things. And then, you know, Bob Seger was kind of Ypsi Ann Arbor.
Oh God,
he was running around with the Bob Seger sound system pre Silver Bullet band. And then also in, you know, so just to go off on like a local tangent, thing fascinating to me about like where I grew up is like dual college town with Ann Arbor. And in the late 60s, in the boom of what became like the John Sinclair MC5 explosion of kind of rock and culture in Ann Arbor, there, you know, in the Black Panther Party in Detroit, you also had John Norman Collins, who was a serial killer that has never gotten the notoriety for the amount of people he killed compared to like Ted Bundy, who also came through and had friends in Ann Arbor the same summer that was going on. So that was all like 67, 68, 69. And so that whole area was kind of like this just bizarro hodgepodge of art and culture. I don't know that necessarily exists anymore the way that it did, but at least is like you know, a brick in the foundation of art and culture in the Metro Detroit area. It was something, again, like when you're young and you're growing up, learning about this area or any area like you grew up in, like, it doesn't resonate with you, you know, it's hard to live in that moment, so to speak. But like when you get older, you take a look and it's just like, man, there's like wild shit happened in my community, and very influential things, especially when it comes to music and rock and roll. And I mean, even how that plays into the influence of of the rapper Isham, who then ICP, Kid Rock, and Eminem all ripped off that dude, and how did Detroit become the mecca of like white hip hop that all stole from this black dude who was rapping about fucking eating dead babies and murdering people in like the late 80s. Detroit, yeah.
So
also George Clinton, like there's just so much there.
George Clinton has a Detroit sort of foot stamp, and of course, I mean Dominic from Brooklyn I mean, of course, Michigan is sort of always tethered to Kiss for good or bad, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean,
not for me, but
and then ICP. I mean, I produced an ICP video in Detroit.
Did you? What video?
Yeah, I did chicken hunting.
Oh shit! Did you really?
Yeah. Yeah, you know who directed that?
Who?
Paris Mayhew from the Cro-Mags.
Did he really?
Yeah, this is when we were doing all this stuff. Typo.
Yeah, sure.
And on that run of when we had, I don't know, me and Paris working together for a couple years.
I remember hearing that. Yeah. So even like back to the radio thing, I remember hearing the Chicken Hunting single on the radio, and just being like, "What the fuck is this?"
Interesting band, man. Interesting.
My first dead body last week. I lied. I still have its fingernails caught in my teeth. Like hearing that on the radio versus like, here's another fucking bullshit Metallica song. Yeah. Of like.
So
was wacky.
Let me ask you. So basically, you're coming up. Obviously, you're a musical lover. How did you get? Let's steer it to photography a little bit. How does photography come into play? How did you get exposed to it? What were your early influences, and kind of when did you start taking pictures? What was your inspiration?
I don't think when I was a kid I even understood that photography was anything beyond just pictures, which sounds stupid saying that out loud. But like I was much more interested in drawing, painting, illustration, and by the time I got to high school, like maybe sophomore year, I had just completely checked out. I was uninterested in being there. I was a good student. I wasn't challenged. I took the same art class like 5 or 6 times. And thankfully the teacher was cool enough to be like, you can just keep coming back to my class and we'll just kind of do like independent study. I'll find shit for you to do. Because there was art 1, art 2. There's nothing else.
Sure.
And locally, there was a community college in the county I grew up in that had a really incredible photo program. And I was a friend of mine in high school. She was like, I'm going to take a community college photo class. And I was like, that sounds cool. I've never really, like disposable cameras. I've never really fucked around with cameras. And so I was like, hey, mom and dad, I want to do this. And they were like, yeah, sure. We'll figure it out. So I enrolled in this community college class, and a friend of my parents had been a portrait photographer in the Ypsilanti, Ann Arbor area, and he had a bunch of old cameras. So he gave me some camera equipment, so I started out on a Minolta SLR 101 metal body, all manual camera. And I think the first time I did that photo class and I was like, oh, I really enjoy this. I like being in the dark room. But I remember just like the first time I printed a picture and it came to life in the developer, like I've been chasing that dragon for 25, 30 years now at this point, of like that feeling of completion. And also like the alchemical like magic of like, how do you point this metal box at a tree or a person or a chaotic moment like a band playing onto a piece of celluloid, shine light through that onto paper, and then drop it in chemicals?
It's incredible.
I don't know how the fuck like this computer works and how we're talking and I'm looking at you, and it's cool that this technology exists now, Drew Stone. But like thinking back to like, do you know like the chemical process? Like all of that is just like, it's kind of magic. Obviously it's science, but as a teenager, it was just like, it just absolutely blew my mind. And I still get like, digital's cool. It is necessary. Turnaround times, especially freelance. There's nothing more satisfying to me even now of shooting film. Like, I just think it looks better. It's more satisfying when you create an image that you're happy with, of like being a master of light in that medium. But that I got bit by that like photo bug pretty young.
And you spent a lot of time in the dark room as a young person?
Yeah. Any chance that I could get in
That's
there,
cool.
you know, it's escapism. You take your Walkman in there, you throw on a tape, and you just disappear.
Two things very interesting. You brought up the Walkman thing. We were going through some stuff here the other day, and Rochelle came across this thing, and I was like, this thing was a big deal when it showed up. This was like, you could put like 1,000 songs. Like this was a big. I plugged it in. It doesn't work. It doesn't take the charge anymore. But I thought when you mentioned Walkman, I had this thing. But
you don't have to carry around a bunch of shit with you.
Yeah.
You know?
And so what I have in my notes, loved being in the dark room, and then equals reminds me of shooting film. And you didn't know what you had. We'd go shoot one of these music videos. You'd go through this whole thing. You'd spend, you know, tens of thousands of dollars. And even before that on films, they would spend hundreds of thousands of dollars. And we'd spend a day shooting a music video or whatever, you know, hoping that by the time, you know, the film's got to get downloaded and everything's downloaded properly and none of the film gets flashed and it makes it to the friggin' laboratory and they develop it properly. And then you do a film to tape transfer. You have no idea what you have until you're sitting in the film to tape transfer room. And then you're finally seeing it and you're like, it's either like high fives all around or open up the window. I'm going to jump out, you know?
Absolutely. And, you know, as you've progressed as a filmmaker in your life, or even in my career, learning how to not make those mistakes because they are very expensive and costly. You know, I mean, there's no comparison of like video, like film 35 millimeter to like stills 35, but you got to, you know, that becomes a cost thing of like, you got to not fuck up so you don't waste money. You know, and being able to get to a skill point of like mastering that. So at least, you know, you shoot 36 frames, you have like 2 or 3 images that are like killer out of that. Like that's a pretty good statistic in you know, something I strove for, but that bit me like really early. And, you know, by then I had started going to like local shows in Ypsi and around Detroit. My childhood neighbor was in a ska band in Detroit. So I kind of got involved in that. And I just took my camera with me. And that was one of those things where it's just like naturally these two worlds that were on my radar just kind of collided. And I exploded and just ran with it and kind of have never looked back.
And when you started going to these early shows and bringing your camera and shooting, let me just ask, who were your early photography? Who were your early influences? Other photographers that and let's not necessarily from our genre and our world, but like who inspired you within you know, as a photographer early on?
I appreciate that you put not from our genre and world, because I think
doesn't matter. Yeah.
Well, I think obviously there's like the cool answers of what got me into our world that are like all pretty classic answers. There's like the Edward Culvers and Glenn Friedman's, and you know, then like not knowing Jeanette Beckman and Martha Cooper, like I guess the god folk of music photography, especially like in what was coming out of New York.
Martha Cooper, huh?
Yeah, dude. Well, I mean, but like her images were like highly influential in what came out of this town that influenced the entire country as far as like visual art in kind of what the world you and I ended up in. Yeah. So I like the way that you phrase that. I think photography was not the influence as much as movies. I loved as a kid, like Universal Monsters, Val Lewton, black and white, horror noir. I still haven't seen the new Nosferatu movie, but like
it's fantastic, man.
I've heard nothing but great things. But like Max Schreck, nobody beats Max Schreck. later getting into like like Night of the Hunter and and kind of like that style of horror noir, I think had a much bigger impact visually to me. And I would say like it the reference and influence is like less photography based as much as just like visual media based, that I've always drawn much more from like movies than I have photographers. Later on, when I guess I could articulate and understand that this is something that somebody gets hired specifically for. You're not shooting a music video. You're not Paris and Drew making the ICP video. Maybe you're the behind the scenes photographer that's going to take some group shots of them and take some group shots or like behind the scenes photos of them acting while you guys are directing them. Right. This is the 90s, Rolling Stone grunge explosion, not knowing who Mark Siegler was, but then knowing who he was later, and even having met him a couple times of like, oh shit, you shot like Nirvana on the cover of Rolling Stone, you shot the Britney Spears, those things I think were things I was absorbing on top of like whatever was in album layouts. I don't know that I necessarily like went and was like, oh, who took that picture, as much as it just kind of was like that complete package, and that's why I think even back to the movies and film, that's like a complete package, whereas a still is like this one isolated moment. I ended up gravitating to that because you can say a lot more, and it's a lot more difficult to say things. It's like one word, one moment, one sentence versus like a whole book, paragraph, or film. And it's a challenge. Flip side of that is like shooting movies is way more fucking difficult than taking stills. But like, what do you do with that? And what's your full intent? But those couple times, and the first couple times in the darkroom just set a fire under my ass to like, that's it. I can't imagine doing anything else. And even now, all these years later, like, I don't know anything else. It's the only thing I know how to do, really. That I can't imagine life having turned out any differently kind of than it has. But I don't want to be like, music saved my life, art saved my life, but
hardcore saved my life, man.
Hardcore saved my life. But it provided an exit strategy, and it provided a new path that I would have never anticipated following. And I just kind of went with it. That door, just walked through it, and
that makes sense. And in the spirit of what we're talking about, it brought something up for me, is that a lot of this kind of stuff is when you're sort of influenced, when you bring over your influences from another world. And it reminded me of the photographer Drew Carolyn, right? Who was it a photography assistant, and the name is escaping me, the photographer's name. It's not Richard Avedon, but Drew took these photos outside of a hardcore matinee.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I'm drawing a blank as to who he was incredibly influenced by, who took, I think, the Dust Bowl, the American Dust Bowl photographs. If anybody out there knows what I'm talking about, Richard Avedon. Richard Avedon, right. So he took those great portraits. And it's interesting what Drew Carolyn did with these now iconic photos, right? He did the book and all that. Here's another one is, due to his influence, Richard Avedon being an assistant and shooting portraits in a totally different sort of realm, he crossed that over the line and did this with hardcore, and it was new, fresh, and incredibly exciting.
Yeah, especially too, in context of it had been documented, but like, had it been documented in that style, and did that then bring that look and culture to a different audience, based on, rather than it being like here's an aggressive looking character in an aggressive situation, here's an aggressive looking character
right
on a white background.
Yeah.
And it makes it like timeless and classic in a very
Incredible.
traditional art sense,
Yeah.
which is always like, that's a whole other fucking 4 hours we could talk about, like what is photography within the art world, being accepted, not accepted, the teeter-totter of that whole topic. But I think that work stands the test of time, because you're right, it does cross over of taking like traditional studio mixed with people who might be like not taken seriously based on like how they look.
Yeah. Were you influenced by Anton?
I can't say that when I early on, no. Mainly because I didn't know who he was. I didn't know who anybody was. I don't think like I spent time looking as much as like I know that image, and then humanistic to just go with patterns of things. I think now, absolutely, if it wasn't a direct influence by him specifically, other people who ripped off his style that then I saw based on X, Y, and Z album art.
It all sort of filters down, doesn't it? And then it becomes absorbed into the American lexicon, which we're living and breathing, or whatever lexicon that might be, that we're living and breathing. And a lot of times we're I guess I'm a product of my environment, right? I don't even know what's influencing me, but I'm living it and I'm breathing it, and it's coming out the pores of my skin. You sent me a bunch of pictures.
That's also like just saying that as like product of your environment, and like even why you mentioned Ypsilanti, and like I brought up the hodgepodge of like the 60s radical culture, even into you can roll your eyes at like the big three white rappers from Detroit, but it's like that product of that environment of all of these things happening in this area that were not necessarily something I was conscious of at the time, definitely had a wild influence on who I grew up to become, and like the paths I sought, based on also, wanting to understand the history of how what I'm hearing in the moment now got influenced by everything that came before it.
Right on.
Which again is like why we're here and other people aren't.
You sent me a bunch of stuff. I couldn't differentiate what some of the earlier stuff was, but if there's something like, I know there was a Rollins photo, is there anything
that was
you
early.
sent me?
That was
okay, yeah, because I want to. We've been doing a lot of talking. I want to put up a couple of things.
Yeah, sure.
What else was the typo stuff early?
That was like mid 2000s. There's a Wesley Willis photo in there. That was very early.
Is this one kind of caught my eye? Beautiful shot.
That typo was like 2007.
Okay. Right.
Yeah, they
towards the end of their run.
It was towards the end. I was not planning on. They played at Harpo's, which for anybody that's toured and played Detroit, or if you're from the Metro Detroit area, Harpo's is a fucking awful place. It is on the east side of Detroit in a neighborhood that is not particularly welcoming to anybody. That night in particular, a friend of mine was supposed to shoot that show. He got sick, called me and was like, "Yo, there's a photo pass waiting for you at Harpo's. Typo's playing. If you can cover for me for this like music media website that was like very much in its infancy in Metro Detroit." And I had a +1, so I called a buddy. We hopped in a car. When you go to Harpo's, you're on I-94 east side of Detroit. You get off Outer Drive. There's a White Castle there. It was snowing. It was January, I believe. Light, there's about an inch or two of snow. I bring this up specifically for the fact that we drive past the White Castle and a car just explodes in the White Castle drive-through, like bursts into flames. It's the most Detroit shit ever. We go to park. Police car pulls up. They're like, "What the fuck are you guys doing? Don't park here." And I'm like, "Why?" They're like, "Park over here. Follow us." Also, there are no police in Detroit, at least then. So the fact that we saw a car explode, they're not responding to that, but they're coming to make sure that we park a block away, go in. Tybo negative plays. Unreal, not knowing towards the end of the career. But it was like all these combinations of like in retrospect of like wild cosmic
We've
lineup of like
we've
how
laughed
that all fucking
we've laughed about Harpo's on this show because I
I
remember
bet.
Harpo's when I was
The
out on the
worst.
road in the early '90s with
Fucking worst.
Biohazard. There's always like there's a fight in the parking lot, you know.
Oh
There's
yeah,
like
Biohazard. I
fucking
feel
there's
like
a skinhead
do that, like, every week.
brawl in the parking
Mhm.
lot, you know, and like Harpo's parking lot was notorious for violence.
Yeah,
man.
dude, it was fucking in growing up in
Is this excuse me? Is this the same show?
yeah.
Okay.
Growing up in that vicinity, you know, the legend of that place and like how fucking violent and dangerous it was. I mean, it's fucking
Yeah.
true.
Righto. And I'm just poking around a little bit. Because we're making our way to the Vitus book, but you sent me. I want to try to touch on some of the earlier stuff leading up to it. You know,
I think there's an American Nightmare photo in there. Wesley Willis.
Let me
Honestly,
see.
I don't remember what I sent you.
Yes, yeah. No, here, Wesley Willis, right here. I got it.
Perfect.
I'm not real familiar with Wesley Willis, so maybe
Wesley Willis, Drew Stone.
Maybe
Wesley
you can.
Willis is from Chicago. He's highly autistic, large black man that used to ride around the buses of Chicago, drawing Chicago, and then just put out all these like really bonkers keyboard records where it was like the same, you know, Casio keyboard loop. And he had such hits as I Whoop Batman's Ass, Rock and Roll McDonald's, which is probably his most favorite.
Oh yeah, people,
song.
everybody, yeah.
See, Rock and Roll
I
McDonald's.
know it.
Jello Biafra got a hold of him, put out some of his records on Alternative Tentacles. But growing up again in the Midwest, like there was a morning show on a different radio station in Detroit where like they used to play Wesley Willis all the time. So, you know, when you're like 13 and you hear, you know, I Whoop Batman's Ass or Suck a Doberman's Dick, eat a llama's ass. As songs played on the radio, you're like, this shit is great. See, Rich saw Wesley Willis at Brownies.
Yeah.
You know, I saw him a bunch of times. I had seen him a handful of times before I started shooting, and that was one of those moments. Like, I just took a camera to the show, and got a couple really great photographs of him. Met him after the show. He headbutted me, as he was known to do, and that image now got licensed to the Punk Rock Museum in Las Vegas because I had a handful of photos in the Punk Museum in Vegas, and I went to visit the museum a year and a half ago, and they have like a live jam room where like people have donated gear, and they had Wesley's keyboard, and I was like, you guys don't have a picture of him? Like, I have photos of him. So they were like, yeah, give us one. I was like, cool. So being literally a teenager taking a picture of this dude that was like incredible, that I don't know how the world would perceive him now if he was active and hadn't passed away. That would be entertaining to say the least to see.
Our friend Chris Enriquez.
Hell yeah, Chris Enriquez. Did you get headbutted by him, Chris Enriquez?
People would brag about getting headbutted by him in high school.
That's part of the legend of that guy, is you get headbutted by him. And I went up and was just simply like, hey, I took photos of you. If you give me your address, like, I'll send you some. And he grabbed me, you know, by the back of the shirt, and he's like, say rock, say roll, and then just headbutted the shit out of me. And then gave me his set list, you know, like signed set list, and gave it to me. And he wrote his address, and he's like, you'll come over to my house and hang out in Chicago, Illinois with me. And I was just like,
that's
fantastic.
This is a Rollins shot. What's the background on this?
The irony of this is a dude I knew who worked at St. Andrews Hall in Detroit where the show took place. I was buying a camera from him that night, and he brought the wrong camera, and I had one roll of film in this camera I didn't know how to use, that I had never used before. And I popped that roll of film in there, and I got one of probably my favorite pictures I've ever taken. Rollins has been photographed a million times. He's a handsome man, iconic for various different reasons, but like, there is the look. Rollins has a look, right? And not to like jerk myself off, but it's like, I captured that intentionally, but like not intentionally, of like I just happened to be there and like point this camera at this dude and it all worked out. You know, the universe took care of it or whatever.
And let me ask you, you know, there's some hip hop stuff that turns up in your work, and is this kind of from that same era? This is Redman.
That was like 2008.
Okay.
There's a venue in Ann Arbor called the Blind Pig that everybody has played at. It's very famous Nirvana bootleg from there. Helmet's played there. All of the bands have played there. And then it kind of fell off. And then in the early 2000s, I don't know who it was that was booking shows there, but got like a lot of hip hop stuff, which was kind of really cool because it was like Redman, Clips, Del Funky Homo Sapien I shot there. Like I whatever. I don't know off the top of my head like a million people, but they started booking these kind of underplays for dudes that I feel like could have played like much bigger rooms. And it was cool because I know a bunch of the people that worked at the bar, so I could kind of just walk in the door and come to whatever. But that Redman show was awesome. Also in a world that like digital photography was kind of just new. There weren't 40 fucking people taking pictures. There was like one or two. So nobody gave a shit. And let's be honest about the vanity of hip hop is like, they want their pictures taken. Yeah. So for me as a youth to like be hammer drunk with no shirt on, standing on the side of the stage, like pointing the camera at Redman, like he can give a fuck. Whereas now I feel like if I did that, I would get tackled and the shit kicked out of me for like being too close, because we live in a drastically different world of you can't trust how insane people are.
Absolutely. that's been shown a couple of times lately, you know. What were the circumstances? So I'm assuming at some point you came to the metro. You came to the tri-state area. You came to New York City.
I moved to New York in 2008 because I was probably going to die if I stayed in Michigan. Realistically, just I had lost my way, Drew Stone, and I needed to find a new path. I moved here to go back to school.
Come to New York, man. Everybody's welcome here.
If you can make it here, you won't kill yourself other places. No,
it's more, excuse me, it's more like, listen, you got fucking problems, come to New York. There's a couple hundred people that have the same problems as you, so it all seems to feel very trivial. And you think you have problems here, everybody's got the same problems, so don't worry about
it. I needed an escape, and I had gotten into the School of Visual Arts to go back to school, which was a colossal fucking waste of money, and that school can eat my ass. But it gave me a direction of I needed to go somewhere and do something and kind of be held accountable. And when you pay a bunch of money to go to an institute of higher learning, you kind of become held accountable. And I very quickly realized that that school is for rich kids who do not give a shit about actually making art and is all kind of jerking off whatever the aesthetic du jour of the time period is, which at that point in time was like the downward heyday of Vice and everybody wanting to shoot like fucking Ryan McGinley, all those jerk offs who just made really mediocre work, and everybody loved them for it because everybody was doing cocaine and like just making very mediocre art, listening to mediocre bands, the whole Strokes bullshit. Anyway, I came here and used my frustration and poured that into just making as much gross, weird shit as I possibly could. I assisted Richard Kern for a while, which was, as an outsider to New York, somebody that, you want to talk about photo influences. I was heavily, heavily influenced by, actually, now that I think about it, and you asking me to kind of throw some names out there, is like Kern was huge to me, not only from his like kind of porno work, but also shooting the no wave stuff and, Carnivore and the classic Peter Steele cock photo from My Girlfriend's Girlfriend single, which I was on a shoot with him one day and I asked him about it and I was like, tell me about that day. tell me about that shoot. And it was cool to like work with somebody who I looked up to, you know, and was an inspiration, and was also like pretty encouraging of what I was doing at the time. And obviously there's bands playing every night of the week in New York City, regardless of like what kind of genre you're into, there's always stuff happening. And so that's an old one. That's AFI, like 25 years ago. St. Andrews Hall in
figured
Detroit.
that. I figured that was before your move, but this is. I really like this photo a lot. I just wanted to put it up. You know,
I spent, you know, to go back to Detroit, I spent a lot of time at St. Andrews Hall, and the Shelter, which is like a dual venue, like kind of Irving Plaza, type venue, and you know, kind of had carte blanche there for a couple of years just to come in and shoot, and really cut my teeth there, and kind of like learned what worked and what didn't work. Anyway, ended up in New York running around, and just made my way into like whatever, you know, was happening locally, with not only connections I had made when the band The Black Dahlia Murder out of Detroit got signed to Metal Blade. They were really good about taking everybody with them to a degree, and allowing other people that like worked in the fringes around music in allowing access to their progression. So I made a lot of contacts, shot a lot from Metal Blade, and kind of got immersed in that world. And just, I don't want to say network, but like I was just around, and I went to stuff that I liked, and had my camera, and met people. And then, you know, ended up at a very infant St. Vitus bar.
You touched on something that rang a bell for me, and that's, you know, and I just wrote about this because I was writing some liner notes for this Madball box set that's coming out, and regarding the 2 videos that I directed for them. And it's nice when bands, you mentioned they brought you up with them, and believe, for those watching the show, believe it or not, it's actually rare. Because
it is rare.
It is rare, because most bands and most artists, you'll work with them at the ground level, and then when they start to become more popular, and a manager has their ear, and a record label has their ear, now that you're at this level, you should work with this person or that person.
Oh, sure.
Those other people you worked with when you were down there, now you're up here, and you should work with, you know, this big name and that big name. So in my experience, you know, there's been very few bands, Biohazard, Madball, that I've worked with, that when they became popular, they actually said, no, this guy's our guy. And
yeah, that's awesome.
You know, so that I related to what you just said about how they pulled you up with them, and that's right.
Yeah. Early on, you know, it was just kind of, it was like friends and family, man, were involved in the explosion of all of that. And even now, all these years later, I'm working on a handful of documentary projects with a couple different bands, and I've been given access to, you know, I'm working on an archive documentary project with Dismember from Sweden,
right on,
and with Seisha from New York, both who are now like reunited legacy acts. But it's cool to get given access of like, you're the guy. Yeah, we're going to work with other people, and like I by no means am like being like, like you only have to work with me, but I've been given access to their lives to kind of document what they're currently doing in a way that I have a lot of respect for, and I appreciate, because as you said, it's very rare to get, I don't want to say exclusivity, because that sounds juvenile, but right. Respect, like pure respect of your aesthetic and how you document us as what we want, because it fits with the vibe. I hate to say that word, the vibe of the band. It fits with their aesthetic, you know, those I guess they're mutually exclusive aesthetics.
Yeah.
So that, you know, the Black Dahlia thing like opened up a lot of doors, did a lot of, and threw me into that world of like what was going on with Metal Blade in kind of the early to mid 2000s. Is I feel like they kind of had a a resurgence, and metal in general just had like a massive resurgence, which I think has a lot to do kind of with like where streaming platforms went, and a generational shift of younger kids, my generation, coming in and kind of creating new bands, new avenues, new venues, new fans.
Sure.
And that exploded. And admittedly, beyond like being a fan of the music, it's way more fucking fun to photograph than like a lot of other things, as being in this like very chaotic environment of hair and riffs and people beating the shit out of each other, and like it's visually stimulating and it's fun to be around. And I've always very much thrived. I feel like there's a past tense, throve myself, thrived in chaotic environments, because you respond to that energy. You know, who wants to play a show? You've been in bands for a million years. The crowd's not reacting. You're not going to have fun on stage. The crowd's not going to have fun because you're not having fun. And it's a symbiotic relationship that even behind the camera, it's like when that energy is there and it's mutual between the crowd and the fans, like those pictures come to life.
And I think it's
easily.
Absolutely. And I think it's fair to say, you know, you get addicted to the chaos a little bit, you know, and I can speak,
there's an adrenaline rush there,
I know Rich Zoller's watching and guys that. I see those
Rich's
guys.
work is also great.
Those guys are like in the middle of those. Yeah. I see you guys in the middle of the scrum, you know, and it's like, damn, you know, we're going to take a break, and we're going to come back and we're going to talk about the Vitus book. But before that, I think this sort of is separate from the Vitus book. I think this is a beautiful shot. I'd like you to tell us a little bit about what's going on here.
It's fucking King Goddamn Diamond. The Phantom of the Opera. I always thought it'd be really cool if King Diamond actually did the Phantom of the Opera like as a live show, given that opera is amazing. You've got all these Emperor, King Diamond, you know, like dudes that obviously drew from classical music, Wagner, creating this like very spooky yet incredibly well written music. And you know, there's I got introduced to King Diamond a million years ago. Actually, Black Dahlia did a tour with them, and we got real high after the Black Dahlia set. And my buddy and I were walking behind the curtain trying to get out of the backstage area, and King Diamond was playing. And we walked behind the banner at the back of the stage, and I think he saw us and was hiding in the shadows. And my friend Tim and I come out from behind the banner, and we're just trying to get down on the floor. And King like jumps out of the shadows with his inverted cross microphone and like hissed at us, and it scared the fuck out of both of us. And we have always joked that he put a curse on us. So getting the opportunity again through Metal Blade to like spend some time photographing the band, and I always try and photograph them whenever they come through town, because it's like nobody does what he does. Like, and you know, I look at it too of like, we're all getting old, everybody's fucking dying. How much longer can he do this? How much longer can any of us do this? So it's like, you just got to go document it and shoot it and watch it while it's still going on. And like, you know, this is just one of those lucky shots where it's like that motherfucker was looking right at me, and I got it, you know. I think your microphone is muted there, Drew.
Sorry. You nailed it. It's one of those moments that, you know,
can't plan for it.
It's 1 in 1,000.
You know,
you nailed it. It's beautiful.
There's 25 years of skill of like knowing how to capture that moment when it arrives, but you never know when that moment is gonna arrive, you know.
And I also like, it's King Diamond. It's kind of got to be black and white, you know.
Yeah,
it's like nobody wants to see King Diamond in color.
No. Well, this goes back to again that like kind of horror noir aesthetic of this image in particular just looks like a Val Lewton movie.
Yeah.
You know, it's like he's going to pop out and then the mummy's going to come creeping, you know,
Absolutely.
Or Boris Karloff's going to lurk in and just do his like death stare.
100%.
Panties are going to drop. It's going to be wild.
That's right. Let me take a sponsor break. It's going to be a couple minutes, and we'll come back and let's get into the Vitus book. And we got lots to talk about. So I'll see you in a couple minutes.
Sounds good.
Thanks. Well, there you have it. Here we go. Halfway, it's the New York Hardcore Chronicles Live. Our guest today is Nathaniel Shannon, talking about his photography, including the St. Vitus book, the first 10 years that he put out. We're going to go deep with this. We've got a lot of photos. Now we're going to go deep into a lot of photos and a lot of the stuff that's gone down at Vitus coming right up. Let's hear from some sponsors. Let's talk about some upcoming shows. Since 1992, Generation Records has been a mainstay of the New York metropolitan area music scene. Today, they offer a diverse selection of new and used rock, jazz, indie, hip-hop, punk, hardcore, metal, blues, soundtrack, and reggae LPs, as well as t-shirts, posters, and other merchandise. They buy used record collections and music memorabilia and will pay you top dollar for them. House calls made for large collections in the tri-state area. Call or email generationrecords@gmail.com and follow them on Facebook and Instagram.
Will that be cash or debt?
Do you mean debit?
Yes. Sorry. Another eternally satisfied customer.
Yo, what's happening? I'm out here at one of our all-ages Sunday matinees on the Bowery. I hope that you are enjoying today's show. I just want to let you know that the New York Hardcore Chronicles Live needs your support. Please step up. There is a Patreon page that has a lot of unique program. Shows are announced there first. Lots of good stuff. There's a PayPal address right there on the screen if you want to make a contribution. There's also a super chat function. You could do that, but the bottom line is this show exists because of your support. We're going to be doing it for a long, long time. Thank you for all your support through the years. Back to the show.
Conditioned by indoctrination, conditioned by society. You're a victim of the digital age, a 21st century casualty. Open your eyes, you're losing control. Open your eyes, put down the phone. Conditioned by misinformation, it's just the media telling us lies. Decipher fiction from the truth, society's slow and tragic demise. Open your eyes, you're losing control. Open your eyes, put down the phone. Everyone's got...
Here we go. Part two, the second hour. Want to mention a couple things. Some shows. Let's do the shows coming up. 1 week from today, Matt Henson from Noise will be on the show. This is part of the promotion because he's coming to town January 19th and playing Berlin. We, ID, are playing as well with American Eagle, Brass Knuckle Brigade, and Tear Gas. But that said, 1 week from today, January 12th, Matt Henson will be on the show. A couple days after that, by popular demand, Delta Bravo Urban Exploration Team, a.k.a. Jimmy Ferrari, will be on the show. Mark Haggerty from Iron Cross and Gray Matter on Sunday, January 26th. Yo, talking about punk rock bowling, the Stern brothers, also of Youth Brigade, are going to be on the show. This is going to be exciting. Sunday, February 2nd. We'll be talking about punk rock bowling, which we are playing, Incendiary Device this year. Looking forward to that. And listen, this is like the white whale right here. Arthur Googie. Is he going to make it? Is this really going to happen? Stay tuned. Wednesday, February 19th, Merle Allen, brother of Gigi Allen. Get ready because the shiznit is going to fly. Hey, come on now. Everyone's excited about this one. Sunday, February 23rd, Dave Lombardo will be on the show. Carl Agal has been rescheduled for Sunday, March 9th. And you hear it here first. This one has not been announced yet. It's going to go up on social media tomorrow. Here we go. Boom. Wednesday, March 19th. Kurt from DRI is finally going to be on the show. So this is a guy that we've been chasing down for a long time. we finally have Kurt up on the show. So looking forward to that as well. Yo, want to shout out new patron? And please, I said it before, yo, if you can find it in your heart to support the show, the place to do it is on Patreon. I want to shout out Kylie Newgrass, who's a latest patron. Good stuff is coming. Patreon is our community within a community. Yo, your support is needed. Yo, nobody's getting rich from this show, but it enables me to be able to focus on this thing. And as you know, a lot goes into the show, and support is what makes it happen. So that said, there's the Patreon address. There's a PayPal address too. If you're a renegade and you're living off the grid and you don't want to mess with Patreon, not that PayPal's living off the grid, but that said, also if you're watching the show, please follow the show on Instagram. That's at Stone Films NYC. Pick up that wretched communication device. Go on Instagram. Follow Stone Films NYC. Please also, if you're watching, like the show. Please give the show a thumbs up if you can. All this stuff helps, or so I'm told. That said, let's clear the deck. Is everybody okay? Yeah, we got Kurt coming on the show. Hey, Hegs, did you see that? You still watching, Hegs? There you go. That said, let us bring on our guest. Hey, man.
Oh, hey. We're back.
There we go. So let's talk a little bit about this book and sort of the background. Give us the background. How did you get, like, just set the table for us regarding this beautiful book.
I was working at Vitus, and there was before the construction, for those who used to frequent there, and for those who have never been there, you'd walk in, and the wall across from the bar, there was molding, and then there was this space that was about 12 inches high. And I would look at it every fucking time I worked, and there was nothing up there. And I was like, we need to like hang photos up from like shows that are going on here.
Is this a valid representation of what you're talking about?
So across from that, there's like just a black wall.
Right.
But where Gunther, the old mascot, is standing is where I would stand, and I would look at this black wall and just be like, something needs to go there. So I was like, why don't we print photos and hang them up there? Obviously, I work here, and I've been shooting here for years and kind of around since the beginning. Sam Marble, Keith Marlowe, a handful of other people been around, been involved since the beginning. And so I kind of curated, I don't want to say a gallery, but a collection of photos that went up there. My old roommate, Jay Morris, used to have all his show posters like in the back live room. Excuse me. And so that was like the first step towards this eventually happening. We did a couple different variations. And before the pandemic, I was thinking a lot about how New York City is incredibly expensive, and there's not a lot of wall space unless you are born into, have the money, or blow your way into the certain art communities. And there's not a lot of like kind of like DIY and art community spaces to show work. And I very much was frustrated by not having access to wall space, mixed with not only for photography, but like all walks of life. And there's a lot of really incredibly talented people that were hanging out at the bar. So myself, Carolyn Harrison, who used to do all the social media and like admin stuff for the bar, who's an absolutely incredible illustrator. She and I were talking a lot about this, and we were talking with the bar about like, let's do like Vitus Presents gallery shows like CB's used to do when they got that space next door. And we're like doing gallery shows. Let's do that. Everybody already compares us to them. Let's expand and like kind of start doing more, because like there's a lot of talent, like I said, talented people hanging out in this fucking room. Let's put our work somewhere. And so we were in the process of doing that, and we had found kind of a space like a couple blocks away that was an event space kind of / gallery that would allow us to come in then March of 2020 hit, and everything changed, and there was lack of work and access, and we were all afforded to a degree free time to do stuff. I don't know where my camera's blurry. And I was looking for projects to do. My buddy William Saunders and I started working on the Dead Guy Killing Music documentary, and we produced that during the pandemic. And I was just like looking for stuff to fill my time, because I looked at the pandemic as something of like, I don't want to wake up when this is like calmed down and not having applied myself and made as much art as possible. I don't want to sit around, and within like weeks of it, I already got tired of listening to people bitch about like, oh, I can't do this and this. And it's like, motherfucker, you can go do whatever you want. Use your mind and like be creative. Like go to your bedroom, go to your bathroom, go outside, like make anything. Utilize this time, because we're all like on forced retirement. What would you do if you got to retire from your job? This is what I would be doing, you know?
I know what I would do. I created this show.
There you go. And so why are we talking right now? Because you and I utilize this free time to do and pursue new avenues.
This show would not exist. Yeah. No way in hell would this show, would we be sitting here right now if it wasn't. And I'm not trying to say the pandemic was this great thing. There was a lot of tragedy there.
Yeah.
But if it wasn't for the pandemic, tragic, I wouldn't have, my hand was forced. My creative hand was forced. I had to do something creative. I'm a creative person.
Yeah. And I think there's those of us that saw that opportunity, and that's why you and I specifically are sitting here talking today. Yeah. And then there's other people just like whined. And then obviously you can mix politics and all that shit we don't need to talk about. But like I had pitched to them because we were coming up at that point on the 10-year anniversary. And I was just like, 10 years for a music venue in this day and age to exist anywhere is a lifetime. Sure. And it's impressive. And it's very cool that there was this monumentous milestone coming up. And I had pitched to them about actually just kind of doing like almost like a fanzine. And those conversations kind of dragged on for a couple months. And I put together some like proof of concepts of like what we could do. And finally, you know, the powers that be and I collectively decided to move forward with this, and I got to work, and it gave me something to do. And I was working like 40, 50, 60 hours a week nonstop. This became like a full-time job for me, and satiated something in me doing like the research of tracking people down, interviewing them, and curating all of this work in a way that like I never thought I would give a shit about any of that, and it not just be like the Nathaniel show and all about me and like me just making my stuff for me and my entertainment. It was awesome to kind of become a researcher in a way that like I dabbled with the Dead Guy thing because I kind of co-directed and produced and did like a lot of researching, setting up interviews for that, and that kind of like got my feet wet. But like with the book, because it was just my project, I ran with it and learned a lot by doing everything kind of the wrong way. But also that became the right way and the only way I knew how to do it. And it took a really long time. Unrealistically, I was very unrealistic about how quickly I thought I could put all of this together. And, you know, it grew and grew and grew and grew. I was anticipating on doing like 100 pages, maybe like 125. And it just, based on time and access, time not being a limiter the way it normally would, but time being, I have so much time to devote to tracking people down. Plus people are around. And like this goes hand in hand with the Dead Guy documentary and the book of like, people were around because they weren't on tour. They weren't doing their normal creative and or economic jobs that they were relying on, and so people were available to like be interviewed and contribute to both of these projects that allowed them to kind of flourish and become much bigger than the initial intent. You know, when Bill and I were working on the Dead Guy documentary, we were thinking like a Vice noisy, like 35, 45 minute thing. And that turned into like a full length film. And we would have never guessed in a million years that Dead Guy got back together because we made this movie about them. And now they're like a functioning band again, putting out new music. It's absolutely bonkers. So then I never anticipated that. So with the book too, I mentioned my old roommate Jay Morris did a lot of show posters. It was just going to be us. It was just going to be like his posters and my photos, kind of simple, like fanzine layout that we could just like sell at the bar. And then it just turned into this coffee table book of me also recognizing it's like, man, I was there, but like I wasn't there all the time. I see even in the video chats, like Rich was there, Tim Daly, you know, Stephen Messina was on here earlier. The amount of people that like were there when I wasn't, given that I don't really care about all of the music that came through that venue, the same way some of the other people that shot there don't care about my tastes, that it wasn't about me. It was about the legacy of this building and something that happened and was needed at a time when there wasn't really any other place for this genre, especially metal, to play in this city without dealing with like Live Nation, AG, or frankly DIY venues that can't necessarily facilitate, you know, a sound system that isn't going to sound like absolute dog shit while you're like in somebody's mom's basement. And like that's cool, but it became this like cultural clubhouse, not only for musicians but also to support the local art community. Of I can't even tell you how many music videos I've directed and photo shoots I've done because I couldn't afford a studio space, but all I had to do is make a phone call and they'd be like, yeah man, I'll just open the door for you, just lock up when you're done.
And let me just interject, you know, our friend Chris Enriquez, and I think this adds some valid important perspective. I grew up going to CBGB, but Vitus was my CBGB in the sense of everyone being family and watching it grow from nothing to legendary. I wear my Vitus merch around the world and people stop to ask questions. So in a lot of ways, it's what we're all about here. It's community and culture. And you guys created something that was a community, so to speak.
Yeah, dude. I remember I took a red eye to LA with my wife. I don't even know why the fuck we were going to California. Red eye. I had worked the night before at another venue. I hadn't slept. I was exhausted. And somebody just runs up and grabs me in the airport, getting off the plane at LAX. And I turn around and I'm like, who's this motherfucker grabbing me? I'm going to swing on him. And it was like somebody from Europe. And they were like, oh, you got the Vitus. This is my generic European accent. Oh, you have Vitus. You have Vitus sweatshirt. And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? And they're like, you St. Vitus venue. And I was like, yeah, I work there. They're like, I was there. I've been there. And I was like, that's cool, man. I gotta get, like, but I was like tired and exhausted, not paying attention to it. And there's actually go back a page. So that dude right there in the Vitus hat, I was in Sweden with Dismember, and they were getting ready to play their first show, reunited in 2019 in 20 years with like pretty much the original lineup. And I went outside just to get like some air, and there's this dude wearing a Vitus hat, and I was like, oh shit, man, like what's up, have you been there? And he was like, yeah, I was just there for whatever the show was a couple days before that. And I was like, I worked that show. I probably served you a drink, and now we're in another country that you live in, that I don't live in, wearing a piece of merch from this venue that caters to a niche community, but like a community that's big enough that I'm seeing it in different parts of the world, and it's like that shit's cool as like,
one thing that I really noticed was the and you mentioned it, is just the effort and work you put in to just get the text. I know how much work is involved when getting this kind of text together from so many different people, and then proofreading it and proofreading it again and proofreading it again. And this is a lot of work. This isn't just a bunch of photos thrown together. There's a lot of work that went into this book. And, I think I want to I want to talk about some of the highlights that you and I, when
Sure.
we pre-showed a bit.
I want
Let's
to
see what-
interject real quick on that
Please.
because I do want to give Eric Palmerly and Katie Napolitano shout outs. Kate was the editor. I met Kate at Vitus because she had edited copy edited the Hard Times book and did an event there, and she is an incredible person, incredibly supportive, and kind of very much held my hand through like a little bit of like the back end of like the publishing world of just I don't fucking know, man. I'm just some dumb kid with a camera. And then Eric Palmerly, who old friend, band Descender, who's played Vitus a million times, he helped really tighten up the design because he is a actual adult when it comes to design versus me vomiting a bunch of shit on the page, and my intent with that too was like, I don't have a design background. However, I like that there's chaos everywhere on the pages because when you walk into that bar, there's shit all over the walls and it's a chaotic place to be to watch chaotic music. And I want the pages to be slightly stressful and chaotic and be like you're in the environment of this room, even if it's just the pages. But I want to thank both of them because if it wasn't for either one of them, this book would have absolutely never happened. Anyway,
Right on.
Back to you, Drew Stone.
Okay, so and thank you, and thanks for taking that pit stop to shout important people out. That's we don't want to forget anyone when we do a project like this. There's so
Absolutely.
many people involved that really deserve to be recognized. So you and I spoke about a couple of the highlights, and
Sure.
let's run through a couple of them. One of the first things that seems to kind of put St. Vitus on the map was this Tony Iommi Black Sabbath
absolutely.
book signing. Could you give us some perspective on this?
Yeah, sure. Dave Castillo ended up, and you can read about it in the book. Buy it, except for you can't because it's sold out. So fuck you if you didn't buy it. Dave Castillo ended up having this 6th-degree connection to Tony Iommi's, and Dave Castillo is the booker, for context, those who don't know, had 6th-degree connection to his booking agent, and he had put out this book, and they just threw out a Hail Mary like, hey, he was doing I believe a signing at like the Barnes and Noble or Borders, whichever it was, in Union Square, and they were like, do you want to do something at like our metal bar? And they were like, yeah, fuck yeah, let's do it. And it was one of those things that, like, Vitus was doing shows, and it's like the neighborhood bar. It started as a neighborhood bar, just metal bar. They didn't originally intend to even do shows there, but like Dave got involved, and like Rich Hall was booking some shit, and like other people, and it just kind of progressed of like doing shows more frequently. And then the Iommi thing happened, and that was like one of those first, I hate to say like clickbait or like viral things that brought attention in the new age of like marketing and media, and bringing attention to your business or whatever you do, that like really got people's attention. As Paul Delaney, who is featured throughout the book because Paul's fucking hilarious and has a lot of great things to say about the place, was like, yeah, man, Tony was in your bar, fucking kill yourself. Like who you get to the godfather of metal guitar just graced your building. Who, what other business in New York can say that they had Tony come and hang out in it, where he's just a peer amongst everybody else that wants to come see him, which is pretty cool. This is a big deal. And that kind of like very much was that first ladder rung being climbed to what became, 10 years of holy shit, this is happening in this room.
It was a real endorsement. It was by really, one of the, not to sound corny, the metal gods.
Yeah, dude.
I mean, it's
not classic,
Yeah,
I mean,
it doesn't get heavier than that.
Not to make fun of like New York hardcore, obviously, like Agnostic Front, Madball, like those classic, that's like a staple for New York. But we're talking about multi-generational god of rock and roll in a way that like people aren't on that pedestal anymore in these genres, the way that like Black Sabbath
It's a different world now. It's set up
100%.
different. So that said, another one that caught my eye that was really, really interesting was this Descendants show.
The coolest thing I've ever seen.
You got to give us the background on this because it's fantastic.
This is another one of those perfect storms, like literally perfect storms of so many people being involved. I know Chris is probably, Enriquez is still watching this. He was a part of it. Justin Skirty was a part of it. Dan Ozzie was a part of it. I was a part of it. Tucker Rule from Thursday was a part of it. Artie and George were a part of it. All of these people were just happened to be in the same place at the same time when this weird event happened of the Descendants playing with the Bronx Gorgo Bordello at Hot Water Music at Riot Fest in 2012 on the Williamsburg waterfront, which is already wacky to me that like that neighborhood changed and hosted this waterfront music festival. Yeah. And the Bronx were wrapping up. And I say this with all ironic sincerity of this Ghostbusters level storm crept over New York. It was bright, sunny, Indian summer, warm, beautiful August afternoon or September. I don't remember. It was broaching fall. And this storm, the sky turned fucking black. It was Reverence Day I've never seen, like, the storm crept in. By the time the Bronx got done, they were like, show's done. This shit is canceled. And I was with Tucker, Justin Skirty, handful of other people, and we're like, let's just go to Vitus. Just go hang out there. We'll just go drink there. So we wandered over, and by the time we got to the bar, I believe Chris Enriquez was involved. Dan Ozzie was involved. They were talking to the Descendants, who were like bummed because they wanted to play, and they were like, we've got this other venue. Do you want to go? I remember being outside of Vitus, and this pickup truck showed up, which I actually got an email from this dude recently that he was the driver of this pickup truck, whose name I don't remember, and I apologize, but thank you for reaching out. This dude volunteered his pickup truck to take their gear in the rain under a tarp from Williamsburg waterfront to Vitus. And it was like all hands on deck. Everybody grab shit and just load them in. The band Judah from Italy, great, like punk rock.
They're great. I've seen them play a couple times. Awesome. They're fantastic. They're
fantastic dudes.
Yeah, I like that.
They were headlining that night, and Artie and George went to them and they were like, look, here's the deal. The Descendants want to play. And they were like, great, let them. They were like, you have to play after. And they were like, we don't fucking care. It's the Descendants. Like, there is a pedigree of things that you can make room for. And I'm sure
it worked out. I'm sure there was plenty of people to see them play as well after.
Yeah. You know? Oh yeah. People hung around after them too. So it's like kind of a win-win of, I believe the quote is like, oh, the Descendants are going to open for us, you know, like, fuck yeah. And within 25 minutes of being there was a line from the front door of Vitus all the way down Manhattan Avenue to like Greenpoint Avenue. It was like 5 or 6 blocks long. It was fucking insane. There was like thousands of people trying to get into the bar. And the fun story that is not in the book, to make myself completely vulnerable, that I'll share here, is we have been day drinking. I was fucking drunk as shit. And I had gone up front with our friend Elena, who lived above the bar. And she's like, you got to get up front so you can take pictures of this. And I was standing there and I had a beer can and I was cutting the top off of the beer can with my keys. And she just looked at me. She's like, what are you fucking doing? And I was like, I got to pee so bad. She's like, you're going to cut your dick off. I will walk you to the bathroom. And I was like, no, I don't want to lose my spot because the fucking Descendants are playing at Vitus. I'm never going to get back in that room because it's packed full of people. And so she had, so dumb, she had security escort me to the bathroom and then bring me back up front. And had that not happened, you wouldn't be looking at my absolutely incredible pictures of probably the coolest thing I've ever seen, that I woke up one day and just went to go see the Descendants play, not knowing that I would get to like have the Descendants sweat on me in this tiny room. And by the next day, in a world again that relies on a 24-hour news cycle of vomit, the Descendants show was all over the internet of everybody being like, what the fuck just happened? And I think most importantly, outside of me having a great experience and really incredible time with my friends, it put Vitus on the map, in a way that you don't have to be a metalhead. Everybody fucking knew about that shit. Like Rolling Stone wrote about, like everybody that was like accredited, if you will, were like, holy shit, this thing happened. And the fact that they were able to pull that off like last minute really was a testament to what the bar was capable of. And it's one of those things of like, you don't know what you're capable of until like you're given the opportunity to like thrive or like, come to or whatever. Absolutely. And it was incredible. Like I woke up, I ended up writing an article for Rock Sound magazine in the UK because I was doing freelance work for them. And I got hired to go shoot Riot Fest, and I emailed that editor the next day. I was like, I've got a way better fucking story for you that you're never going to believe. I want to write this thing for you because I was there and nobody else was. Like, you were just going to publish some photos or whatever, which is cool. But it was like, this is a big deal, man.
Very cool. Another one, which is really sort of, I don't want to say off in another direction, but which has always been sort of intriguing. And I remember when this was happening, there was sort of like this Nirvana and Friends thing that went down.
Sure.
Tell us about this a little bit.
So I wasn't there for this. So I can't speak a whole lot other than it's obviously kind of a very long story based on, if you're looking at the video here, all of the text that went into through this. But the short version is like they were getting inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And it had been pitched to someone. The discussion had come up that they should play a show at a small venue as like an after party thing. And there were some 6 Degrees connected to the band based on some old New Jersey and New York friendships that connected and made it possible for them to play. Keith Marlowe, who is a wonderful person and photographer, ended up getting into the show and took these pictures, which I think he was the only person that shot that show, which is, again, pretty impressive if you think of like, here's this band, whether you love them or not, that like changed the music industry. And to be the only person with a camera that documented the only time this will ever fucking happen is like pretty cool for Keith. I'm not going to say that I wasn't like absolutely super pissed the next day when I found out this happened and I was not there to document it, but I'm elated that Keith was, because I love Keith and I would rather have somebody I like document this than somebody I don't care for, to be a complete asshole about it. And it, as Chris Enriquez just posted in the chat here, it was like the craziest night, I think, of everybody's lives. There's actually a picture of Keith there, after the show. And that was the thing that, Descendants, Tony Iommi, again, are niche. Those are niche things for a certain community. Nirvana is like, was the biggest goddamn band on the planet. Kind of still is. I mean, they've become like more of a t-shirt brand than like a band, but like they're still as popular today as they were 30 fucking years ago, if not more so. It's bonkers to me. So I think, especially when it comes to the underplay and keeping secrets of like when Megadeth played or Blink-182, again, love them, hate them, one of the biggest goddamn bands on the planet. They did a secret show there that set the stage of what the bar was able to do of keeping their fucking mouth shut and booking stuff that became these epic underplays when nobody else was doing that in the city, because there was like kind of no other venue to do that, when it came down to making the book, there was a lot of show posters that were missing for certain events that I thought were very important, and the Nirvana one. So we brought in like some artists to like make retroactive show posters, and the Nirvana one everybody was fighting over. And I was talking to Artie, Shepard from the bar, and I was just like, I kind of think it would be cool, since it's your bar, if you had your daughter make the show poster.
Is that the
what's
poster?
cooler
Is that the poster that I showed that's in the
Yeah,
book?
yeah. So she drew that.
Find that
Charlotte,
again. Yeah, let me find that again.
Charlie drew that, his daughter. It was it was an illustration, like she had drawn that, and then he sent it to me and was like, I love this drawing, you should use this. And I was like, perfect, because then nobody can argue over it. And I think that there's nothing cooler than Nirvana doing a reunion and having a kid draw the show poster. I feel like the band would be into it. I thought it was hilarious and awesome.
Yeah,
And
it's great.
it's fucking cool, man. And it's honestly one of my favorite. It's one of my favorite parts of the book, because, you know, St. Vitus Bar is for the children. Why would you not want to include kids in what, you know, the bar is creating, of like passing that on to kind of the next generation? Plus, like, it quelled people fighting and like begging me to like let them make that poster.
Yeah. The just poking around a little bit, you know, this one caught my eye. You know, part of the reason because we played it when I was singing for Antidote, but this was Vinny Stigma's 60th birthday party, which is going back 8 years now or something, 9 years, I think.
It's like 40 years ago. Yeah,
this was great. It was Agnostic Front, Antidote, and who else? Oh, and Hammer and Nails. This is like the last time I ever toured. We did a little run with Agnostic Front, but this was great, man. And it was a fantastic night. It was Vinny Stigma's 60th birthday. It was friggin', it was a blast, man.
What
are those your shots?
No, that's all Steven, I believe.
Oh, these are Steve. Those are
yeah. I wasn't.
Hey, Skipper, those are your shots?
That's
hey, bud.
Yeah.
You're there.
Those are my shots.
Very cool.
I was not. I don't know why I wasn't there. I wasn't there, but Steven was, and I'm glad that you were, because you captured it. You know, you captured it perfectly.
Steven,
he's going to be 70 this year. It's 10 years.
Wow. That's wild.
Even Vinny ended up providing a quote, which I used for like the opening quote of the book. Artie was there. Of course he was.
Yeah. Hey, Artie, we got to get you on the show one of these days, brother.
You should come on the show. Come on right now, Artie. Dial in. Take your shirt off.
Right. So go ahead.
When I was trying to figure out like the layout of the book and like a good way to like pull people in, I had gotten a response from the Agnostic Front camp, and like I got provided with a couple of Vinny quotes, and the Vinny quote at the beginning of the book of like, I'm Catholic and I don't know who the fuck St. Vitus is, or who the hell St. Vitus is. I was like, I read that and laughed. I was like, that has to be the beginning of the book. Like that is the intro, not only because Godfather of Hardcore, freaking New York, but also like, I mean, he's not wrong. Like most people don't know who the saint was, or like the history of the name, and like, you know, there's like a lot of different factors that go into the naming, whether it's, you know, the band or the Sabbath song or yada yada yada. So I thought that was like absolutely great.
Yeah, it's a good. Steven, do you have a couple other photos in the book?
I do. I have Venom Inc. in there.
Tony Dolan is awesome.
Ah, yes, the Demolition Man.
Dude, he is so. Out of all of the people I interviewed for the book, which there's probably like 100, whether they were like in person, video, or like email based, I think Tony's was my favorite of just being like the most fun person to talk to, because he's an actor, so he's very theatric and just like the nicest person in the world. That I think our interview for the book was maybe, you know, like 25-30 minutes, and I was on a video chat with that dude for like an hour and a half, just hanging, just talking, just connecting as people. And, you know, like I'll always kind of cherish that of like, I would have never expected that one of the dudes from Venom was like, it's so much fun to like sit and talk to.
Those guys are all characters.
Anything,
I had Abaddon on the show. Those guys are characters.
Yeah, sure.
It's like having Manowar on your show. Those guys are characters, man.
Tony reminds me of J.K. Simmons a little bit when I look at him, you know.
Artie, why didn't Manowar ever play a Vitus?
Yeah.
That's a good question.
Just saying.
That makes sense.
Yeah, Drew, I also have some KCBC did a beer event there, and I have some shots
Oh, yeah,
as
yeah.
well. But
Tell me, Nathaniel, about this one. This one really caught my. I remember when this was happening. This is Vic and the Rattleheads. What was this about?
I can't not look at Dave Mustaine and like not laugh. Given, hey man, let's be honest. Everybody loves Metallica and Megadeth. They were highly influential bands that like just what fucking wieners they all turned into as adults. This was another one that like they were in town doing some press and 6 degrees of friendships. Chris Enriquez was involved in this one too, working with Revolver, and I believe it was the Metal God Awards were happening, and he got pitched to them to like do this underplay, and it was absolutely fucking bonkers. I have like I shot live photos of that, and it was the most as Chris said, it was the Revolver Awards, not Metal God, or I don't know, Metal Revolver whatever awards. They were winning an award for having the coolest hair in whatever year the show was, 2016. It was probably the most crowded show I've ever been to at that bar.
Wow.
Like I shot this show, but like admittedly my live pictures weren't great because it was I couldn't last in that room for very long. But I went to the sound check beforehand, which watching them sound check Hangar 18 acoustic, because they were doing like a radio thing or something, was pretty fucking cool.
Yeah.
And
That's
then
great.
we had reached out to Mustaine's management, which our friend Chris Shields was working at for the time, and he helped us get a quote from him. And I'm not going to repeat the quote. You gotta read about it in the book. But what Dave Mustaine said, I was like, I don't know that we can publish this because you just make yourself look like the biggest asshole in the world, but also you approved this, so I can't not put it in the book, but it makes me laugh every time I think about it. So for those of you that have the book, you know what I'm talking about. And if you don't, maybe you'll get to read about it someday. But it is Dave Mustaine being the most Dave Mustaine could possibly be.
That makes sense. Hey, Steven, I'll see you in a minute. Hang out. We'll bring you back.
Absolutely.
That said, let me take a quicker sponsor break. Be a couple minutes, a quick shout out, shorter, and we'll come back and let's poke around. I got a few favorites I want to ask you about, and we'll take some questions from around the world. Okay?
Yeah, sure. Sounds great.
There you have it. This is the one, the only, often imitated, never duplicated New York Hardcore Chronicles Live. We are sponsored by the Texas Silver Rush, DTFM Vinyl Distro, Generation Records, Mad Vintage, and 126 Hardcore Clothing. They're a streetwear brand for restless individuals who don't compromise. They're about being positive, spontaneous, and true to yourself. For years, they experimented with several printing methods and materials and collaborated with a large number of designers and illustrators, always giving room for fresh perspectives while retaining the hardcore attitude. Get in touch with them. Ramp up your game. www.126clothing.com. Last but not least, come on now, Joe Romini, the Texas Silver Rush. They're a jewelry design firm and boutique store located in the birthplace of the Texas country music scene in Fredericksburg, Texas. They specialize in working with musicians in all music genres to design and create unique one-off pieces, as well as to style them for stage, album covers, promo photos, and social media exposure. The client list includes Rock and Roll Hall of Famers Greg Rollet, Ringo Starr, and of course, my friends and yours, Agnostic Front. Information and online sales are being taken at their Facebook and Instagram pages, and of course, www.thetexassilverrush.com. By the way, there is room on the New York Hardcore Chronicles Live boat for another sponsor. If you want to get down, reach out. Even if it's for a month or two, we'd love to have you. There is room on the boat right now for another sponsor. Let's mix it up. Step up, up. Hey, that said, I want to talk about some events that are coming up. Speaking of awards shows, this January 21st is the second annual Extreme Music Awards Show up in Albany. Jason Bittner is doing a big music thing. Mike Valente, Black and Blue. This is a great awards show. This is happening on January 11th. couple days after that, on January 17th, shouting out Authentic Productions here in New York. They got a Piston Broke show with our friends The Take and a couple others at the Wood Shop in Brooklyn. And then 2 days later is one of our free Back to the New York Hardcore Roots series all ages shows. This is at Berlin. This is going to be an absolute barn burner. It's with Noise, who's coming in for the West Coast. Incendiary Device, it's going to jump off tonight. American Eagle Reunion, Brass Knuckle Brigade, big boys here, and Tear Gas. This is a big banger on Sunday, January 19th at Berlin, right around the corner from the Bowery Electric. Yo, another one, Authentic Productions, Raw Brigade is playing the Meadows on February 8th. Another one of our shows at also at Berlin, Bobby Steele and the Undead are playing in New York for the first time in a very long time, along with Sad Plant, Star Car featuring Sab Gray from Iron Cross, the Car Bomb Parade, and Prize Fighter. Come on, get up, get down. And then back where it all began in the A7, currently known as Niagara, on Sunday, March 2nd. This is a free show. However, it is 21 and plus, under in the shadow of the New York Hardcore Plaque ID. We are playing along with Crazy Eddie. So there you go. And then, of course, Saturday, March 22nd, the Rai Rai Fest featuring Fishbone and many others at the Brooklyn Monarch. And we just announced this. It is our annual Memorial Day weekend Tompkins Square Park show. Just announced this the other day. Non-residents, Butterbrain, Fire is Murder, End of Hope, and Sonic Bomb. If it's free, it is for me in our beloved Tompkins Square Park. So there you have it. That said, let's bring our guest back, Nathaniel Shannon. Hey, man.
Oh, hey.
Hey. And let's poke around a little bit. You know, there's so much great stuff you sent me, and we've only kind of scratched the surface. Let's do a couple minutes. I want to ask you about. Hey, by the way, did you ever see your hardcore trading card? You ever see that?
Of me?
This is you.
I guess I'm the only one that's on here.
This is you, isn't it? This would be you,
asshole.
Right? That would be you. That's the front, and there is a back to it. Let me see. Where is it? Where's the back?
You know what's funny about that picture is my buddy Chris Sorensen. He's like a celeb portrait photographer. I was assisting him on a shoot with one of the Jonas Brothers. Ooh. At some like rooftop bar in Manhattan, and he took that picture of me standing in the bathroom. So I was trying to do my my Jonas Brothers pose.
Here's the back of your card, bro. Yep. There you go.
Look at that.
Yeah. Yep. Very cool. There you go. There you go, Josh.
I don't know that I was born in 1967.
Is that right?
If I was, I look really fucking good.
that would make us that would make you 4 years younger than me, and I doubt that's the case. But
I mean, you also look good for me being born in 1967, Drew Stone.
I'm born in 1963. So, yeah. So there you go. That said, well, let me see what there's a couple here I really love. You know, one band that this is a fantastic shot, and I know you guys were talking about this a little earlier. Tell us what's going on in here.
Oh man, Goat Whore. This is man, this was such a fucking wild day. So I had gone to New Orleans. Goat Whore were doing a new record for Metal Blade, which was I believe the Carving Out the Eyes of God album. And we were running around New Orleans shooting. Went, to the cemetery with Marie Laveau, did all of the kind of classic New Orleans metal trope locations. And The model in that photo was a friend of theirs who was working at the House of Shock, which is like Phil Anselmo's haunted house. And so they were like, do you want to go there? And I was like, yeah, fuck yeah. We get to go run around a haunted house and I get to take pictures of you guys. So we've been shooting there a couple hours and we were taking like a Taco Bell break. And this dude comes up to me and he's like, hey man, do you want to photograph the band up on the castle wall? So context, the entrance to the House of Shock was that really terrible band Godsmack's stage, which was a castle wall. So if you imagine like that little frame there, if you go wider than that, there is like a lower ledge where the band stood and then this like wraparound castle wall. And this guy's like, do you want me to shoot off some pyro behind it? And I was like, what are you talking about, pyro? And he's like, I do pyro here and for the Saints. And we're getting ready to, for football season. So it's like we're testing out the pyro, but like all I have to do is set the shit up and I can build like a wall of fire behind the castle wall.
Awesome.
And I'm like, Drew Stone, you've directed music videos. How much the fuck do you think that would cost if somebody hired a crew to do that? And I was like, this is like a $10,000 hire on a no budget Metal Blade shoot that I got flown to like New Orleans last minute to go hang out. It was one of my favorite bands. And like, I spent a lot of time with those dudes. So like, it was cool, but like, I was like, here's what's going to happen. Go put on all your gauntlets. And I was like, we need to find somebody to like cover in blood to sacrifice. And they had hired an erotic, or not hired. They had called an erotic dancer friend of the band who showed up and was like, yeah, I'll do it. And then when it came time to shoot, freaked out and was like, nope, not going to do it. So Ashley, I believe her name was, who was a friend of the band, was like, fuck it, I'll do it. Let's make this shoot happen.
Fuck it, I'll do it. I'll get half naked and put the blood all over me.
Shout out to her. In this whole image right here, you're looking at like 5 minutes. The dude was just like, how tall do you want the fireballs? And I think the options were like 20 feet, like 40 feet. And I was like, dude, whatever you want to do, go for it.
It's a really fantastic shot, man.
And it was one of those things, like I submitted them to the label and they were like, how did you make that happen? I was like, I don't know, dude, I was just there. Like I just happened to be talking. I think I was like smoking a cigarette, talking to this dude, and he was like, this is what I do. I shoot fireballs off. And I was like, awesome, let's make that happen. Can we do that? And he was like, yeah. It was bonkers, like absolutely bonkers.
Here's one, and let's try. We'll bang through them like fairly swiftly. This is a band that I like very much, going back a long time, Obituary. And this is obviously at Vitus. Can you give us some perspective on this one?
I had seen them a bunch of times, and they're absolutely my favorite American death metal band. Of just taking Celtic Frost riffs and rewriting them a million times for fucking 45 years. I think they're the best in sincere ways and corny ways. Like I love Obituary. So when they got announced that they were doing the 2 nights back to back, the first time that they did it, and then they did it again years later, like I was so fucking pumped. And that's it. The Tardy brothers are incredible. What great people, like they're very visually stimulating. And that was just one of those things, man. Stars Align, the band energy was great. The crowd energy, because I feel like that was before a more recent boom of like going to Vitus to look cool, to be a complete asshole about it, versus like fucking nerds that like loved it. Like every person that was at that show loved that band and was so pumped to be there. And that the photo show of like, it was just perfect moment again of me. I just happened to be there,
I like, is this shot taken with our pal Mike? Is this in the basement of Vitus?
Yeah.
So
this is the last group shot with Joey before he died. Joey is the dude closest there, who is their drummer. I had the flu.
And let me just interject that this is I Hate God.
Yes, I Hate God. This ended up being the back album cover of their self-titled record, which was the first record they had put out in like decade and a half, 2 decades. I had the flu and wasn't going to go, and they were doing 2 nights, and I was like, fuck, man, I have to go. Like, I have to go. Like, I've known them forever. And we were down in the basement, and they were getting ready to play, and that mirror had been in the basement for years and had been broken a bunch of times and had been sitting there forever. For those that are familiar with the Vitus basement or not, there was this hilariously disgusting couch, and then this broken mirror that was like kind of behind it. And they were standing there getting ready, and I just saw the reflection. I was like, we got to do this picture real quick in this mirror. I took it. They played. It was great. I went home. I don't remember what happened. Life happened. And then I got a call one day from Gary, their bass player. It was like, I'm sorry. Life happened. Joey passed away, and they had already recorded this new record with him. And Gary called me and was like, hey, we want to use this picture as the back. It's like, you took like the last group shot of all of us with Joey in the picture, and we love this. We want to use it for the back. And it's like one of those things of like, I remember finding out I Hate God CD when I was a teenager, and like,
is it, excuse me, this is the same?
Yeah, it's the same night. It was like one of those things of like, I remember having, preaching the end time message, whatever it was, whatever the first record, like I had come across the CD in the 90s and just, being like, wow, man, like there's so much to unpack with this. Sure. And then end up being friends with these dudes all these years later. And then getting that opportunity of like, as you and I were talking earlier of like, it's like that respect of people trusting you that your Drew Stone's video or Nathaniel's photo is what best represents their sounds. Is like, there's nothing cooler than that, of like that. I hate to use the word collaboration, but it's like that pure trust of like, this is what we want to represent us. Right. And I was just like, I could have just not gone to that. I felt like fucking dog shit. And
as you photographers know, guys like you and Messina and Zoller and Tim Daly, it's the one you don't go to is the one that bites you, man.
There's like a billion. There's a billion. Yeah. There's a billion. It's always like, oh man, I wish I had taken pictures of that opening band that went on to like blow the fuck up.
That's right. I just want to say, hey, anybody out there have any questions for Nathaniel? Please post them. Go deep. Answers. Get weird. Any questions are welcome. Let's do questions from around the world as we are fielding some more of these great shots. Let me see who else really. Ooh, what did I just do? Okay. This is different, and okay, this is fair enough. Sander asks, how does your experience as a photographer influence your writing style and storytelling? And what do you hope readers take away from your book?
Sander coming in with curveballs. Not really a curveball. I think the experiences are, it's easy to sit in your room and like fantasize about stuff. Whether it's like falling in love or connecting with another person or something scary or processing everyday life. Spending 25 plus years now running around, getting punched in the face, shooting bands has made me acutely more aware of like my need to feed off of the energy of chaos and how that affects who I am on a day-to-day basis, which is like always a struggle. I hate to make this an ageist comment of, it's not easy to jump into a crowd of people punching and beating the shit out of each other now as it was 20 years ago. And there's an anxiety, but there's also like an experiential skill set that comes from, I know how to walk into any room or any environment and understand what the light is and how to create an image that tells the story of that environment, whether it's Drew Stone sitting in his apartment, walking in, it's like, okay, well, I already know what the exposure is going to be. I know exactly how to capture Drew Stone portraying him as the film director, the show host, and get that vibe, for lack of a better word, of like who you are and that essence, right? That takes time. Taking pictures is fucking easy.
Yeah.
Navigating environments and understanding how to, in a split second, portray who somebody is, if it's portrait and or live stuff, is like all that is repetition.
Yeah.
That's not actually an answer to that question. I just
But
went
it was
off in a direction.
it was
Sorry,
it definitely lent some perspective.
Yeah, man.
I like this one. Thank you, Darren. Have there been any bands you wished you could have taken photos for? Like, we kind of mentioned that, anyone, you know what, let's open it up to like anyone in general, like through the ages, that like, if I could get in the time machine, is there anybody you wish you could have got a crack at?
Man, I think seeing Pink Floyd in London in the 60s would have been really cool.
Now we're talking with Sid Barrett.
I would take any lineup, man. I mean, obviously, like Sid Barrett was more psychedelic, that era of when Piper at the Gates of Dawn came out. Like, imagine being in a room
that's what I'm talking about.
25 people that give a shit and everybody else being like, fuck this, let's go to the bar. I think that would have been like really cool. I don't, man, that's such a it's such a open-ended question. It's not a bad question. It's just my musical taste and influence are so all over the place, from 90s hip hop to metal to hardcore. Sure. Like I couldn't narrow down anything, but I think being in an era of like maybe like 30s or 40s jazz.
There you go.
Let's take it back to this. Here, let's
I like what you're cooking, brother.
Let's go down a weird road of like, think about like Prohibition jazz. What images have you ever seen of that?
Right.
There aren't any, really.
Yeah,
I mean, there was commercial photography, like cellular photography was becoming somewhat of a medium. There's images, but it's like, imagine being at a point where this technology exists, but there's so little of it that you can be a part of a world where there is like now every motherfucker has a camera in their pocket that's like awesome. Imagine being in a world where like you were one of like 100,000 people. Like how many people lived in the US in like 1930 during Prohibition jazz that maybe know how to operate a camera? There's like 2 people in New York City, right? Are any of them going to go shoot that? Like, that to me would be like, fucking cool. But it's all like the context of like, do you even recognize like, oh, there's nobody else that does this? And fucking Billie Holiday is going to come up and make everybody cry of singing the most depressing music you've ever heard. I think it would be fucking cool. And I also love Pink Floyd. So that would be my other answer.
I like that early Pink Floyd stuff too. And you know what I trip out on is on a lot of this like really old archival footage, like from World War I or World War II or any of this stuff. When you see sort of the people sort of, they're looking at the camera and sort of staring at it, because back then it was such an incredible anomaly. And not only that, but they're looking at the camera just as like, oh, like, wow, we've never seen like a camera and a cameraman. And of course, they never saw the footage. I mean, those people, it's so interesting that they were captured in that moment. They were gawking at this like incredible bit of technology, and yet those people never ever saw their images and never saw the footage.
Yeah,
footage,
sure.
Yeah, no, a lot of the footage has never been seen until into the internet world. Here's a shot that I like a lot. Here's an old friend, and this is not a live setting. What's going on here?
Oh, Tommy, great dude. Prong put out a new record a year ago, and I got a call to go photograph Tommy recording with Steve Evans, which was cool because Steve is an old buddy, based on working with him a little bit on the Dead Guy documentary and just being around a lot of mutual friends. So it's cool to go to Steve's studio in Jersey and hang out with him and Tommy for the day while Tommy was wrapping up some vocals on the last Prong record. I'm a very big fan of Prong from when I was younger. Tommy's a really nice dude. I had a really incredible experience with him where I walked in and was like, here's kind of what I'm thinking. He's like, yeah, fuck yeah, let's do it. And I think we shot for maybe a half hour and then sat around and drank coffee and talked ironically about our mutual love of the Lions, the Detroit Lions. And we like talked football and sports for a while, which was really funny. Again, like having not ever met him before, but I was just like, he's a fucking great dude. What a great experience connecting with another person. And, I think his energy allowed me to like do what I'm good at and create like powerful images of him because he was open to it and was like, yeah, what do we got to do? Let's bang it out.
Tommy's a great music lover, man. I mean, Tommy's a
It's
guy,
cool.
I've worked with a lot of people, and there are musicians, and there are musicians and artists that were kind of just at the right place in the right time. But then there's people that just loved music. And they just made it happen, and they know how to treat people, and they're kind, and they know how to compose themselves, and Tommy's one of them, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's right. Tommy's part of the Danzig. Good. Well, welcome, Questions of Old, and thank you for a good question. What photography tech are you looking forward to the most? And is printed material books making a comeback?
Gear and tech is always a weird outlier of when it comes to like musical equipment or cameras, I don't necessarily pay attention to like what is happening. I generally like find a guitar I like or a camera I like, and I learn enough about that tool to facilitate whatever I want to use that tool for. There's probably a lot of things about the same camera I've been using for 10 years that like I don't know that it actually does. You know what I mean? Of tech I don't know. It doesn't really interest me as much as like the story of whatever the subject matter is and that interaction and the experience I get from being behind the camera in that situation is like way more interesting to me than like wherever the technology's at. Not to say there's anything wrong with that. I think camera technology is absolutely insane, and I don't actually know enough about it to really comment on it because it's kind of all just magic to me.
Gotcha. Here's another one that deserves a little.
Oh, I do want to say the printed material, the second part of that question.
Please.
I think that there is a desire for physical media, from print media to cassette tapes, that is a much deeper conversation about like the gatekeeping of generations. But like, I think in my experience recently working with a handful of bands that have considerably younger audiences, those kids love stuff. the same way we love stuff because we grew up on stuff and we didn't have access to like not having stuff and having digital stuff. And they are very interested in the cassette tape package zine world that we all came from, of physical content. And I think that there's an appreciation for that more now than there has been in like maybe the last decade or two. That I don't know that it's like back, but it's like that's all subjective and relative to like who are the audiences that give a shit and like want to buy whatever. Like, you know, I know like you're working with Generation Records of like putting out some books. Like, well, those are specific to communities. They're not for everybody, but those communities, whether it's people your age, my age, or younger, like they give a shit and are going to continue to give a shit. And it's cool to see that. Mainstream, I don't know. I think there's ebbs and flows of all technology and everything. I wouldn't be surprised. You know, vinyl sales are bigger now than they've ever been, ever. Thanks to Adele, Taylor Swift, like, you know, pop music. What does that mean for everybody else? I don't know, but like it's cool that like kids are buying that shit. Maybe that means that they're also gonna buy a book. Taylor Swift puts out like a fucking photo book. Motherfuckers, like kids are gonna buy that. And I think that's cool. That keeps print presses in business. Like everybody kind of benefits from that.
I'll tell you something about sort of like what I know just about my sponsor, Generation Records. Yo, it ain't punk and hardcore records that are keeping the doors open over there for the past decade. It's friggin' Taylor Swift vinyl and Adele vinyl, and the fact that they're situated in NYU, and there's every semester new kids, new freshmen are coming in and showing up at Generation Records to buy the new Taylor Swift.
Yeah, man.
That's what's keeping the door. That's what's keeping the doors open for the rest of it. God bless them. But that's how it works.
For every NYU freshman that buys a Taylor Swift record, they'll eventually get to Portishead.
Yeah, there you go.
You know, like there's always going to be. You need a gateway. You know, we weren't all cool our entire lives.
What? Let's as we head down the home stretch here. This is a pretty powerful shot. What's going on here?
I was out with a band, Heads of a Roll, from Detroit, Michigan. Their guitar player, Jeff Tuttle, ended up playing with Dillinger Escape Plan. This is Ben Wyman from Dillinger Escape Plan. Heads of a Roll were opening for them at Chain Reaction in Anaheim, California, which is comparable to St. Vitus. It's like a pretty small room, except for the PAs were hanging from the ceiling rather than being... Well, I guess the PAs at Vitus were hanging from the ceiling too. They were much bigger because technology was different. This is like 2005. Ben ran up the wall to jump off of the wall into the stage and hit his head and cracked his head open on the PA, and just immediately he collapsed and then stood up and was covered in blood. And it was like 45 seconds in the first fucking song. That motherfucker played for the rest of the show. It was like an hour-long set. Insane. Went backstage, covered in blood. I got this picture of him, and then he got rushed to the ER and ended up having like 5 or 6 staples in his head, and I think still has like bone fragments bouncing around his spine because of it. Absolutely bonkers. That again, 45 seconds into the first song, and then played the rest of the set. You're muted again.
And he played the whole set?
Yeah, whole set. The next night, I think we were in San Francisco, and he like blacked out on stage and like freaked out. And I remember talking to him, and I was like, "Hey man, like, are you all right?" And he was like, "I'm like blacking out," because he had a concussion. I think, I'm assuming he did. It's like pretty intense injury that like also was like, well, you don't want to let your fans down, on top of getting paid and shit. But it was just like again one of those things. Like, I just happened to be there, man.
Yeah.
You know,
you mentioned the book? Can people purchase the book? Is the book sold out for now? What's happening with the book
now? And I'm glad you brought that up. We've got a couple of things going on. I should have actually sent you an image of this because you could have plugged it. Book is sold out. There's talks about maybe doing a second printing, but we do have 100 copy specific variant for the end of January. I'm doing an event with with everybody's favorite friend, Walter Schreifels. He and I are doing a Q&A at the Punk Rock Museum. He's doing some tours, and we're going to do a book release of 100 copies of a exclusive variant for the museum. Walter and I are talking, and our friend Dan Ozzie is coming to moderate this event. And then there's going to be an exhibit of a bunch of my work from the book that is going to be up in the museum, I think through April. And yeah, it's going to be a good time. Walter and I are going to talk. Dan and I are going to talk. We'll talk a bunch of shit. Maybe we'll talk about pizza and Vitus.
I'm trying to find the flyer right now.
I probably should have sent it to you.
Yeah,
that's
always a good. That's always a good idea when promoting an event, and I don't see it on your Facebook page.
Promoting anything,
but take our word for it, kids.
Hold on real quick.
Him and Wally are doing an event at the Punk Rock Museum in Vegas, and the book will be available there.
Can I
send it on Facebook?
Send it on Facebook.
Or send it however you want, whatever.
Can I text it to you right now?
Yeah, text it to me, and then I'll send it to myself, and then blah 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 blah.
And then down the rabbit hole of stuff. Yeah, so that's coming up.
Would they have to? But in order to get one of these, you have to be at the Punk Rock Museum. Is that correct?
Yeah. So for now, that's
you
what's
need to
happening.
do a second printing, bro.
Yeah, we're working on that.
Yeah.
It's coming. Again, this was such a wacky thing that I didn't expect it to take the legs. How do I say this? I didn't expect it to turn into what it was. I had expectations that I would occupy my time making some cool stuff and reconnect with some people and give myself something to do. And it's really just taken on its own legs of it's bonkers to me, who's seen it. And I get messages constantly from people who are been very supportive, and it's awesome. Because that venue is very, very, very important to not only myself, but New York City. And I think, the domestic music scene at large of there's not a lot of places left. I've been afforded the opportunity to go. I see your Gilman 924 Gilman Street sticker on your guitar behind you. It's that's it, dude. That place is the most punk rock place still in America, which is fucking cool as shit that it exists. And Vitus got to kind of be part of that lexicon of the language of what we all kind of have gravitated to in our youth and adulthood, that gave a stage and a place for people to congregate and celebrate that they're still alive. And not only that, but provide a room and an opportunity, as I was saying earlier, for myself and other people to have a room in Brooklyn to go explore our ideas in a city that is so astronomically unaffordable to try and fucking do stuff. Somebody just mentioned First U Church in Philly. Same thing, man. It's so cool that those places exist. I was just at the First U a month and a half ago for a show, and it's getting older. When I go into those environments, I'm this is awesome that this place still exists.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's a different appreciation for the room versus yeah, it's cool. Bands are always going to exist. We're going to die. Music's never going to stop. Art is never going to stop. But appreciating the space into which people can congregate is it gets rarer and rarer, and it's harder and harder, whether you're on stage or as a fan or as an employee, to be into it and not hate what that is. And appreciate the support and community, surrounded around those things. Is
absolutely, man. I mean, we can relate. We can relate in so much that we have our Bowery Electric shows that previously
man.
Were at A7, and they're free all ages shows. And
it's awesome that Bowery Electric still exists.
Yeah, and God bless Jesse Mallon, who basically lets us do, what we,
Sure.
what we do, and is not, kind of, we're really blessed in that regard. And he is our patron saint. But, there's a guy that knows what it's like to be 15 years old and go to punk and hardcore shows
Sure.
and connect with the community and the culture, and
Sure.
and sees the inherent value in what we're doing, and pushes for it against his partners, who sometimes might be like very dismissive, or the hardcore. And Jesse said, no, this is important. Yeah, it's not making tons of money, but it's very important stuff. So we're very, very fortunate in that regard. And here's the flyer. And let me ask you, just as we head down the home stretch here, anybody you want to thank, anybody you want to mention, anybody you want to shout out?
Well, I have to thank my wife, Miss Rachel Salerno, because she had to listen to me talk about this book for years. She had to listen to me produce the Dead Guy documentary. And I probably never wants to hear that band mentioned ever again. And I appreciate just being able to bounce ideas off of her and have conversations. I appreciate Artie and George and Dave at the bar for giving me kind of carte blanche to come in and do whatever I want to do. On top of the fact that, Artie especially, they're all should say specifically, they're all really great people, and I appreciate their friendships and the relationships we've all developed over the years with their business and what I do. But that belief in the greater good of understanding the longevity of having communal spaces to just kind of continue on what we've always done from when we were younger to now, and nourish that is super fucking important. And I know that that's something that they all very much value. So me coming to them being yo, let's do a book, and then be why would we do a book? I'd be let's do a book, and that back and forth, and finally be all right, man, go for it. And providing me, I provided myself with the opportunity, but having access in, again, just happening to be in a place where this thing happened in this moment of time, and then understanding I need to make something. I have this collection, but all these other people have collections. Let's put our collections together, and I want to curate it. Is I don't know. That wasn't my intent when I moved here, but I ended up finding that thing of this is the reason maybe that I ended up in this city, was to make this book. And if that's it, and then it's all right, thanks Stone, thanks everybody, I'm gonna walk away, and then I'm gonna go to whatever the next thing is in my life. That's fucking cool. How many people move somewhere or go anywhere in their life and don't ever find anything other than here's a job, here's a relationship, here's this thing, and they're whatever, it's I think have all been fortunate to find this little thing, I think even having these connections of let's take it back to Insane Clown Posse, Drew. That's hilarious to me that you were a part of that. And well, I don't really give a shit about ICP. I understand the importance of their fan base, which may not be for everyone, but their fans have each other in that community, and I have to respect that. So the fact that you helped facilitate something in that, even if it's not for us, is fucking awesome, because there's a lot of people that could love to have our money or have our souls in a capitalistic world. We got to keep helping each other. This is my spiritual positivity.
You're allowed some of it.
I'm allowed some of it, just a little bit. I'm just going to keep bringing up how you help produce an ICP video, because I think it's great.
This is my legacy. This is my legacy. The Insane Clown Posse chicken hunting video that I produced.
Hey man,
right?
But again, I get why people will make fun of them. I have always thought that there is a parallel as far as subcultural influence that was never touched really by corporate money between like Discord records and like Psychopathic, of like the two most punk rock things, of like they started shit for themselves and it was all very, very, very DIY, and created these subcultures that like most people do not look at with like an acceptable handshake. And I will forever appreciate both worlds. And I think it's like hilarious. Maybe those worlds don't necessarily like each other.
I'll tell you something.
Well, like they're very similar, of like, how is this any different other than it's like a different clown suit, you know?
I'll tell you something really, and you'll appreciate this. Sure, I produced the Insane Clown Posse video. And I've told this story many times. I had a gold record from it. And then somehow some juggalo saw that I had it. It wasn't from the show, but just kept offering me more and more money until I just finally was like, fine, you can have, like, you know, you want to give me that? And this is during the pandemic. Basically, on my website, I took pictures of all like my accolades and put it. And then I guess if you do a Google search, this kid found it and said, I'm putting together a Juggalo museum. Do you want it? You know, would you sell it for $400? Dude, I'm not selling my gold records for $400. You know, 500, 600, 800. Finally, I said to the guy, you know, if you want to give me this amount, I'll meet you halfway and you can fucking have the thing. And the kid, you know, and I thought, you know what? The kid's so enthusiastic about it, but you'll get a kick out of this. After I did the video, when I was working with Biohazard, I was tour managing, and Biohazard went out with the Insane Clown Posse in the Midwest, and they played, and it was arenas, bro. It was like, it was big fucking places, Cobo Hall in Detroit. And But ICP was the first band that I ever saw. They bootlegged their own stuff. What they did was, as opposed to just like getting stuff from their record label, they took like a CD, and duped it up, and they were selling hundreds of them. They bootlegged their own stuff. They were like, "Fuck the record label," you know. We're gonna see a penny on that. They made their own CDs and their own stuff, and they were selling them hand over fist in arenas. They were the first. They were the first band I ever saw who bootlegged their own shit.
It's awesome. They're really smart about everything that they've ever done, the same way like Ian was smart about like everything he did. And I've always, you know, again, this is like I think a controversial topic amongst the gatekeeping of subcultures, of like comparing the two, but it's just like there's no fucking different, man. There was like an opportunity, you saw it, you made your art, you kept it like fucking local in the family, like literally in those communities, and it thrived, and people responded to it, you know, in communities where like people didn't feel heard or disenfranchised, and they found like their people, and like that's way cooler than
and this sort of thing, which is sort of humorous when people go, you know, we have our scene, or we're punk rock, or we're this, and what we have is a lot of these sort of subcultures, these communities and these cultures, you know, and I've seen this as a young person, of course. You know, I didn't see it that way, but as somebody who's a bit of a historian and a documentarian, I realized that sort of the culture of the Summer of Love in 1966, and the culture of, let's say, New York hardcore of 1983, and the culture of punk rock, you know, it's all youth. It's all youth-driven community and culture, and there are a lot of similarities between them. None of them being, you know, radically unique in its own regard. It's sort of like a template that repeats itself over and over again, and that's the beauty of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, man. So, hey, thank you so much for being on the show. I really enjoyed it. You're welcome back. You got to come back again. There's so much we didn't talk about.
I would love to.
So you'll come back
again.
Another
thing I do want to plug is Tuesday of this week, since this is live. William Saunders and I from Fourth Media, who directed the Dead Guy documentary with me, we're announcing that we are now working with Snapcase on the Snapcase Legacy documentary project. So that is that's our big goal, to get production underway with that and start chipping away at the Snapcase story, which I'm excited about, because that's another one where it's just like,
that's a good one.
You spend all this time kind of being a fan, and then you kind of end up in the environment with peers, and you know, you earn the respect of people based on like the work you make. And that was something where like we started talking with them, and they were like, fuck yeah, let's do this. So I'm very excited that we're doing like a full announcement this Tuesday the 7th. And so everybody keep their eyes peeled for details of that and how they can help out and contribute. And I'm excited to get our feet wet with that. And yeah, the thing in Vegas is coming up, the Punk Museum, so it's going to be very cool. And I appreciate you, Drew Stone, for having me on, asking me to do this and let me ramble on about make you talk about the Insane Clown Posse for 2 hours.
It's great. Listen, I do it because I love it. I'm very fortunate to have this opportunity. And let's talk soon.
Yeah, man. Also, fuck the Vikings and let's go Lions.
All right. I'll talk to you later, man.
Thanks, Drew. I'll talk to you soon, brother.
Pleasure. Boom. Boom. Stick that in your pipe and smoke it. Thanks, everybody. Fantastic show. Thank you, Pat Baldwin. Sherbert, nice to see your comment in there. Always nice to see a new face in the comment room. Got a couple of names for the proposed Drew Stone Generation Records label imprint. United Front Records, Broken Records, Permanent Records, Hard Records, Legendary Records, Forever Life Records. Any other suggestions you have, send them through. We'll probably be at this for a while. Probably every one of those names has been taken. Gen 3 Records. Yeah. You know, Rad Episode Records. I like it. Stone Age. Listen, if it can't be Gen 3 because it's all Generation Records, and it can't be Stone Age because it's all me. There has to be, both of us have to be in the name. So, you know, that said, that kind of thing. But, you know, we'll keep plugging away. We will figure it out. Dog Biscuit Records. I'm not a big, you know, Blood Forge Records. I don't know if Mark Yoshi will like that, but I'll write that one down. Blood Forge Records. All right. Dog Biscuit Records. Are the Williamsburg and 59th Street Bridge still free? As a matter of fact, they're not, my friend. Congestion pricing went into effect today in New York City. Depends on where you're coming from. There's no way to get on the 59th Street Bridge and now not be told. No, actually, they're not free. None of them are ever free again. $9. If you're coming into the city and you're taking the upper level of the 59th Street Bridge and you go off at 62nd Street, you won't get charged. Listen, don't even get me going on this congestion pricing thing. It's just incomprehensible that as they're setting people on fire in the subway and pushing people in front of the subway, they have the audacity with a straight face to say that subway crime is down and we're passing this congestion pricing thing, therefore forcing more people to take the subway. It is absolutely unbelievable. Unbelievable. Don't even get me started on this congestion pricing thing. I'm so disappointed in the you know, what am I disappointed in? The level of corruption of government in New York City and the MTA. All right. Just don't drive. Listen, you opened up the Pandora's. Just don't drive in Manhattan. I live in Manhattan and I own a fucking car. How about us that live in Manhattan and that own cars? And don't tell me I shouldn't have a car. All right. Use fake plates. Fake plates aren't that easy. People are getting busted for that. And I'm not trying to get busted for fake plates. You know, it is Good Karma Record. Thank you. Thank you, Cindy. Incendiary. Good Karma Records. I like that one. You know what? How about Congestion Records? Congestion Pricing Records. That's a good one. Congestion Pricing Records. You know? There you go. Yeah, moving to Florida. Probably will eventually. That's right. That's what I said. Congestion Pricing Records. It's actually pretty funny. Probably someone just, that's funny. I'll call Mark Yoshi tonight. How about Congestion Pricing Records? Kind of funny. Kind of works in its own way. In Your Face Records. I don't know. That said, listen, we'll see you in a week. We got Matt Henson from Noise on the show in a week. Very excited to have him on because, as many of you know, he's coming to town and we're playing together on January 19th. So we'll see you in about a week, people. Everything else okay. Violent Subway Records. Oh, boy. Okay. Think about it till the next show, everybody. Thanks a lot. It was great to see you all and interact with everybody today. Until next time, do good things and good things will come.
Conditioned by indoctrination, conditioned by society. You're a victim of the digital age, a 21st century casualty. Open your eyes, you're losing control. Open your eyes, put down the phone. Conditioned by misinformation, it's just the media telling us lies. There's lots of fiction from the truth.